Good evening. I'd like to call to order the planning board meeting of November 28, 2017.
Oh,
The first item on the agenda is minutes from the 14th and the 21st.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes of November 14th, 2017, November 21st, 2017.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. The next item on the agenda is public comment. If you're here for any other reason that's not on our agenda tonight, you have an opportunity to address the board. Does anyone have anything to speak to the board about that is not on the agenda? Okay, thank you very much. The next is a public hearing. The applicant is Robert Paul's, a definitive plan to create 2 lots to construct adequate access to the 2 lots located at 0 Terhan Drive, map 35130. So this is a definitive plan. We want, first we'll listen to a presentation by the applicant, and then we'll have comments as it relates to the plan from the public. Yes.
Jim, there's quite a few people here who might not know the process. Maybe you want to explain? Good idea.
Okay. So anyone that would like to speak, would like to just raise their hand. We'll identify you. Can come up and identify yourself. And you can speak to something that's on this presentation. If you're talking about something else that's not on the presentation, you know, a conservation issue or some other issue that this board doesn't have, we're going to politely ask you to hold your comments and go to the right meeting. We're only going to discuss things that are on the planning board plan. Now, I know a lot of time everyone's worried about stuff, so we're warning you in advance. If it's not something to do with the planning stage and it's on another board's issue, we'll ask you to please hold that for the other board because we can't help you anyway. So that's just the point. Yeah, Paul?
Notices.
Notices, why don't you?
Notices for this project were published on November 10th, November 17th, November 24th, 2017, and 9 abutters were notified by certified mail return receipt.
All set? For the applicant.
My name is Mike McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and professional land surveyor. My firm prepared plans that have been filed with this definitive plan. A definitive means that we're creating a roadway and we're providing access. And what this graphic shows you is that there is going to be, there is an existing 80-foot wide right-of-way that starts at Hillcrest Drive.
Excuse me, Mike, we put a new pointer up there on the desktop. Do you see it folded? It's very powerful. It's in a case. Did you put your, nope, you don't. I thought it was there.
No, I think maybe you took it out of the
Maybe you
case.
took it out. That's much stronger. That shows up on television at home. Not, the other one's not visible, so that's a new device that shows up on TV at home.
Thank you. I didn't know.
But just, you're the first one to use it.
Yeah. And we were warned, don't point it in
Yeah, don't
anybody's
point it in
eye.
No, I
anybody's
would never
face.
do that. By the way, I had another landmark in my life. I now have worked 47 years in Falmouth.
Oh,
I started in
congratulations.
November 1970. So
Wow.
I've done 70 subdivisions across southeastern Massachusetts. I've designed 40 miles of road. So I've done this before. So in 1983, there was a plan that sort of looked something like this that was approved by the planning board. And the bottom line, one of the conditions is they had to submit a construction plan showing that how this existing roadway was going to be improved, and that was never done. Plus, the Mylar has been lost. So the bottom line is we've started over. And there is, when Burnham Drive was created, this road was shown on the subdivision plan with solid lines. So this road actually exists, and there is a court decree as well as a grant that says that, in layman's terms, that the land that used to be Falmouth Institute, which is basically Highfield, has the right, and anybody that was along the road, has the right to build this road and they're supposed to have the same rights as in a public road. So the bottom line is this shows the property line, and what we did was, since this was 80 foot wide, we extended this as if this was the same width, so that all of the rights that are contained in the old grant are within the road. There's two conforming lots. Lot 1 has got a 150-foot circle plus over 45,000 square feet, and Lot 2 also has over 45,000 square feet. The town has a requirement that you fit a circle in the lot, and that shows you the two circles. Now, I have another. Maybe I don't. How do you, all right. So one of the things I wanted to show was the general relationship, and this is a copy of the plan that's recorded in Plan Book 250 and page 13. That's the piece of land we're subdividing, and on that recorded plan, this roadway was defined with solid lines. There's no surveying dimensions there. It's an irregular line. That's what I have done. I've defined it much more precisely on the locus. The next plan shows, this is a construction plan. This is Hillcrest Drive here. I'm sorry I took the label off. But what this is we're showing the Lot 1 and Lot 2 are right here. And we're showing there's 14-foot wide pavement coming down here, and it sweeps around, and we're making this slightly wider where the existing paved driveway for Lot 33 exists. So we're going to start at the same location. This has been sized so that a significant vehicle like a fire engine can easily make this turn. This is 14-foot wide. It's wider here in the event that someone is coming out here and someone's beginning to turn in. There's enough room for two vehicles. One can stop here and the other one can pass. This is being proposed to be paved because the previous submission, we showed it as gravel, but it was 8.5%, and that would be prone to a lot of erosion. So we have shown it to be pavement after discussions with the town. As far as drainage, there is we show that the pavement over here is pitched. There's a waterway that goes down to a leaching pit with a beehive grate. And then over here, there's a solid catch basin. There's a leaching catch basin. And then across the street is a beehive in grate in a small depression. A beehive grate means that the catch basin has a rounded cover, and it's something that the town of Falmouth prefers. Rounded cover means it's full of slots. So each of these beehives is in a slight depression so that the water will leach into the ground on the surface, plus leach into the ground by entering in the catch basins. So we also show that there's, rather than bring a water main up there, this is getting very expensive, we show two water services. You got quite a lengthy referral from the engineering department, and I did file a response. I skipped something. When I filed this, I included a letter that described that we were asking for waivers of requirements. In other words, this is not a 22-foot wide pavement like you'd normally expect, but it's only 14-foot wide, so we asked for waivers. And so that's in line with what your requirements are, and there's a little bit of history. When we first were hired, we had designed a very quick road, and then when we staked it out, it turns out that the existing roadway that's now it's been only used on foot traffic, so at the moment, there's only a footpath on there, on the ground. But I drove this back in the 80s when I did the Paul's original plan. So it used to be passable. This is land of the Falmouth Hospital. It's been subject to a conservation restriction, but in one of the permits for one of the additions, this was identified as an emergency access for the hospital. Someone has put up boulders. The hospital, Joe Martini used to come once in a while and take the boulders down, but it's been a long time that this has not been used by traffic. So when I walked it after we had staked it, I realized that the roadway surface is actually much lower than the ground surface up where I had set the stakes. So what I showed on the construction plans, that we're building it down where the actual old roadway is. And if you walk out here, all along this side, there's a break or a slope, and it's a significant slope. So when we widen this, this is now a cut slope. So meaning it's going to be cut into the earth to build the road. So our intent is to widen what used to be the old way. Under the engineering referral was 3 pages. In any case, it is what it is. The first thing is they think that I need a special permit because they say this is a shared driveway, but I've applied as a definitive plan, which means that this is a road. It's clearly shown as a road. So we don't need to worry about special permits for shared driveways. They pointed out that this was labeled in 2 places as 6 by 6, but in one of the cross sections it was 4 foot wide, so we fixed that. They said we didn't provide a topographic plan, but I did, so I don't know why. Then they're saying that that this curve and this curve, they think should be have greater radiuses because you have a subdivision regulation that says so. When the town rebuilt the Mullen School, Hamlin Road was moved, and I worked for the town and the engineering department, and the curves on that relocated road are 100 feet radius, and it doesn't have 150 foot between it. When you write subdivision regulations, they're supposed to be based on the expected traffic. So I will tell the board that this is a perfectly safe configuration. Obviously, the Mullen Hall School roadway is perfectly safe. There's been no real issues with it. And so I think that this is a proper configuration of the radiuses, and I point out that we did ask for that. So we did ask for waivers of fire hydrants, sidewalks, grass plots, and street lights. They pointed out that we didn't have on a cross-section the thickness of the gravel. We did that. And so one of the things that perhaps they're not aware of is that this is an ancient way and has existed prior to the subdivision control law. You have an access policy that says people like that could widen an ancient way to get access to an isolated lot, and you only require 14 foot of gravel. So to me, we're gaining 1 lot and we're building a roadway which is sufficient, I think, to meet the needs of both houses. So then they question the property lines here, but the bottom line is I'm a professional land surveyor, And I have shown on the plan how I determine the lot lines. I'd be happy to answer any questions from the board about the property line locations. So to sum it all up, we've asked for the planning board to consider approving this roadway. This will provide the access for one additional lot. I believe that if you consider everything here, this is not a major project whatsoever. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Oh, I want to make sure you understand. See that? That says footpath remains. I'm sorry that I apparently chose a bad color for the graphics. So anyways, I just want to make sure you understand what that says. There is a footpath that basically goes on this side always of the right of way. Are there any questions I can answer from the planning board?
I'm just curious, this is labeled as 0 Tribune Drive. It's not on Tribune Drive. Why is that labeled that way? What's the purpose of it?
Perhaps you should ask the engineering department. I don't know.
It's not on Tribune Drive, I'm just curious.
Well, the bottom line is that, as I said, this used to go all the way through to Tribune Drive, but like I said, this is now under a conservation restriction, so we actually can't build the road that way. So I don't know why it's, the engineering department signs a number.
I'm not sure the engineering department labeled it. The second preliminary question is, that road you have coming in shows a slope between 8 and 9%.
Yes,
Doesn't that exceed the ability of fire trucks and others to get in that area?
no, your
What's the
regulations say a maximum is 10%. There are certain roads in Falmouth that exceed that. Nautica Road, when you come up to Woods Hole Road, is 12%. Bayside Drive has got 2 areas that are 14%. So 8% is well within the capability of the fire truck.
Thank you.
Yes?
You have given us a topographical map, thank you, but I don't understand it. And I wonder if you have it there on the screen and could locate the lots on that topographical map.
I don't think I have a graphic with the topographic map on it. Perhaps I did give you a topographic map.
That would be this?
No, I gave you a copy of the town map. Well,
It's every in your package.
it was in the package, the original file. This is what it looked like, and this is the parcel.
Well, Mike, can't we see it here?
Yeah, I mean, but the topo only goes, this is the parcel. This is the local. That we're fighting, and here's the road. Right? Oh,
You don't get to walk off with it.
all right? I did give you plenty of copies of that.
What's the steepest slope that the road in, on the road itself, not
8%.
8%? But this- Do you see this?
That-
Is the
that's
diagram of the
8%.
road here showing the slope?
Yeah, that's what we were
We're
looking at,
looking
trying
at,
to
yeah.
figure out where the house would sit on this slope. Yeah, you go from here to there.
The end of the state. With your
So if
permission.
I understand it, this diagram is for the road, and the houses will have driveways.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so they're not... Go ahead, Paul.
I just have one minor question. On your letter of November 27th, which I found a little circuitous, but at item 3, it says, "The elevation of the ancient way was blank feet below the ground." What sort of elevation were we talking about there?
When you walk,
Well, it's missing a number.
it is? The one I have says it was consistently in cut. So the elevation of the ancient way was, oh, I see. It was, it's several feet. You're right, I missed the word. It should be several feet. If,
It's not a definitive number, it's several feet, so it's...
yeah, it varies, obviously, but in other words, there's a path here that you can walk. And the path would be basically in a flat area that would go like this, and then always on this side, the ground is higher by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 feet at times. So if you go and look at where the stakes are, they're up on top. And so that's why the bottom line is we want to build the pavement where the actual ancient cut is for where the road used to be, shall we say.
The point is, it's a significant number.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
John, any questions down there?
Yes. Have you spoken with the water department? You say you just want to run 2 services up there and not run a main?
He did file a referral, and he wanted to make sure that the owner has rights to do this. And the grant is very broad. It says the right-of-way for all purposes for which streets may now or hereafter be used in Falmouth. So that's broad enough that I believe that they can bring water up the road.
Have you spoken to the water department yet?
I spoke to Steve Rafferty, yes, but it was before I filed this, to be blunt. If you remember, I filed one, I withdrew it, and then I refiled it. So I have spoken to Steve twice, but not, I mean, it's been over a month since I talked to him. He did file a referral saying that if you approve the plan, then the water meters have to be down in this area. So they don't have to drive up to read the meters.
So you think he's okay with 1-inch services?
There,
Or are they going to be larger than 1 inch? I couldn't see it.
I'm gonna, he filed a referral. Proponent proposes water service to each lot through a dedicated 2-inch water service located within the layout of the end name connected to the existing main in Hillcrest Drive. Water is available at this location. Proponent will need to make a separate application for the service and pay appropriate fees. Proponent should be aware they need to provide documentation of the legal rights to install and maintain the water service in the end name road. Also, due to the length of the service, the department will require a 2-inch meter pit at the location of the existing water main in Hillcrest Drive. So, I'd be happy to give you a copy of the easement grant. It's broad enough, I think, that he will go.
Mr. Chairman, wait a moment. Excuse me? Just for the board's edification, the fire department has referred no comment.
Okay.
So on the 14-foot wide roadway you're proposing, on one side is a higher elevation, on the other side?
Yes.
Are you doing anything to contain the water on the road till it gets to the catch basins? Are you putting a berm? So it doesn't show a berm on here. And I think you said you're not proposing to put a berm on? I mean, there's a lot of elevation there, right? Is it-
Yes, if you
eight-
look at
18 feet or
this,
so?
this is a significant amount of, if the plan doesn't show a berm, we can easily add a berm on this, especially with the 8%.
Okay. No, I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Just curious, some of the issues that were brought up about, is the owner at 10 Hillcrest Drive involved with the agreement with the planning of this common driveway? And will there be an agreement to maintain this roadway between the three occupants?
The bottom line is that my reading of the grant is that we don't need his approval to build this road. And we do need to coordinate, because we will be altering his driveway there, but there's no other way around that. So then, what I wrote in my letter was, he doesn't have any responsibility for the maintenance of this. The responsibility is for the owners of Lot 1 and 2. So I also point out that I've never heard of the planning board requiring maintenance agreements in recent history. So, but by law, Lots 1 and 2, they're responsible for maintaining that road. I don't see how if it's Messenger is the, or as trustee, I don't see how he has any responsibility at all towards this road, the maintenance of that road.
Okay.
That if you're worried about it, that's a suitable condition.
Bob, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused about this is going to be a new road. It's not a driveway, correct?
It's a new road.
New road. Does it have a name yet?
No, normally, well, if you want a road name, we'll get a road name.
Well, no.
Normally, we can file definitives and then we have to submit a road name
Okay.
once it's approved.
So you're cutting off the end of the paved driveway that's there. And the new
No,
road,
well, go ahead, I'm
the
sorry.
new road cuts across the end where it's showing it now, where it joins Hillcrest Drive. So you're widening Hillcrest Drive at that point, am I correct?
This is the sideline of Hillcrest Drive. The existing paved driveway is right here.
Yeah.
When we came into it, I had two choices. I could make it very strange with a crossing. So what I tried to do is widen his paved driveway. The grades are the same here.
Yeah.
And the thing I did was that we need to be able to turn a vehicle, and there's this, the vehicle we use is what's called a standard, I forget now, but basically it's a fire truck can make
Yeah.
that turn. So I'm not, yes, when we construct this, we'll be interfering with his use of his road, but I believe it'll be temporary.
Okay.
Board members all set? Or Pat, anything?
No, we have not done this for a very long time, but I think this might be an instructive place to have a site visit.
Oh, I'm definitely,
Yeah.
we need
We
to do
have to-
that.
we
I
have
came
to
to that
take-
conclusion as soon as I
But we
saw
have to
it.
take a vote of the planning board to
Yes.
do that.
Yeah.
Is that a motion?
I will so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna be making a site visit.
I understood, so you'll be having a meeting, you post the agenda.
Yeah.
And I'll be there to show you the stakes at
Yeah,
least.
we'll coordinate. I was gonna, thank you very much.
I have
Paul?
one question. What's the cross-section of that access road? I mean, you have looks like a high point about 105 feet at station 350, and you have a low point about 87 at station 100. That's about 8% or so, a little more than 8%, but that's a pretty steep runoff rate. And I see you have two catch basins down the end. Are these constrained on the roadway, or what controls the flow down this roadway?
The bottom line is the planning board sees that I have filed a typical it says driveway cross-section, obviously this is a road. And what it shows is that it pitches towards the north. And if you look at the construction drawings here, there's a stone line swale that runs from the edge of the pavement down to the leaching catch basin. There's actually a forebay a forebay is just as a depression that'll catch some of the silt.
Right.
Then the road pitches, and down here, this is a regular leaching catch basin, meaning there's a frame and grate that looks like a traditional catch basin. There's a pipe that goes underneath, and here is another leaching pit with a beehive cover. So the water, for instance, will run down here, and it doesn't, almost doesn't matter which side, because on this side, there's also a spillway that's made of crushed stone that goes over to the beehive. And this catch basin is set off the pavement, just like traditional catch basins are. So,
So both those catch basins are off the paved area. That's why there's a beehive grate. Is that correct?
this has got a beehive, that's got a beehive. This one is snug with the edge of the pavement. And when we add the berm, we'll berm it around the catch basin.
Okay, I only see two beehives on these drawings.
There's a beehive there and a beehive there, and this is a regular leaching catch basin.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the board? All set for now? Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment? Yes, sir. Please step up and identify yourself.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Pamela, for asking that question about has Mike talked with anybody who resides at 10 Hillcrest Drive? I am one of the two people, along with my wife, who purchased that property at 10 Hillcrest Drive, effective August 15th of this year, buying it from the Messenger Trust. I will start by saying we learned a lot by coming to this meeting. We met Mike for the first time. Good to meet you. We learned a lot that we had never heard before. We did not know about that 1983 ruling or report. We were unaware of it, and we hired an attorney to do some research, but we're not. So we're curious to see that and hear about it a little bit more. The attorney did tell us that the land court decision of 1934 allowed that right to that right-of-way, that the right-of-way was by court decision a legal entity, and the owner of the to-be-developed property has the right to the right-of-way. So we understand that. But I'm very glad to hear that the planning board has decided to make a site visit, because I would ask you to see with your own eyes and compare some of the assertions you have heard here tonight. To hear the phrase existing roadway, and then to look at the bucolic forest that is that existing roadway, and see if you can find it. It's not immediately easy to see, but you can find the thin, gentle little path that leaves from our driveway, not from the road, but from our driveway, leads from our driveway gently through the woods and comes out at Terhune, through property owned by Falmouth Hospital. First property owned by us, then property owned by Mr. Pultz, and then property owned by Falmouth Hospital. A pathway used by walkers, by runners, including me many times. I have to leap over felled trees on that path, but it is a path. I don't know for how long it has been a path, but you can make that judgment when you make your search. So it does not look like an existing roadway. So wherever you find those phrases, check it out when you make your visit and see if it It may have been at one time an existing roadway, I don't know. It certainly does not look like one now. And again, I would look at where this road is proposed to enter our driveway. You were told this will not be a shared driveway. Take a look with your own eyes and see how whether or not it could not be a shared driveway. The responsibility for maintaining that road, which by the way is on land we own. It will be on, if it's a true right of way, as I understand it, on land we own. It's difficult to see how, if there are any issues with the maintenance of that road or driveway, it's really a driveway. When you look at it, when you look at it, what else could it be but a driveway? You go up our driveway, you take a right, take a driveway to two soon-to-be-developed lots. The word road, I would ask you to reflect on a little bit.
Sir, we approve roads, not driveways. So if
Okay.
it's on our plan, we're gonna call it a road.
Okay,
That's what we
that's
do.
fine.
And that's a definitive plan.
Then you
that's
might
roads.
end up deciding it's not in your purview. You might. When you see it come off our driveway, do roads come off driveways? It appears that it comes off our driveway.
Are you not disputing that the right-of-way is there?
The right of way is there.
Okay, that's what, we're on the same page then.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. I also learned today, the path, as I mentioned, goes to Terhune. I also learned today, perhaps, that the roadway, the authorized road, goes to Terhune. If that road has a right to go to Terhune, you might want to, the abutter of the hospital might have some interest in that, because that road would be going over the hospital land. Anyway, I think that's just about it. I just want to read what we read on our deed when we purchased this property. It was clear we should have done more research than we did. Unaware as we were that Mike was at work. Well, actually, he was not precisely at work at that time, but that soon a additional road or driveway, however one concludes it looks like will be. We read this. There is granted and pertinent to the above described premises a right-of-way in and over Hillcrest Drive, Burnham Drive, and the existing roadway. Said plan for all purposes for which ways are commonly used in the town of Falmouth. Now, we may have misunderstood that, but we thought that meant that nice path, which is indeed used for the common purposes of all those neighbors in Falmouth. We may have been fools. It is in fact a road going to a development.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am?
I'm Kathleen Burke. I live at 30 Hillcrest Drive, and I'm also pleased that you're going to take a site visit because it is clearly a footpath. I also didn't have the history. I've lived there since 1999. I always thought of it as a right-of-way. It is a access that many people in the area use to go from Highfield to Hume, the hospital, down this path. It's a rugged path down to Woodneck Beach. So we can kind of visualize what you're doing. I guess I had just a couple of questions. One would involve the continued access. If you were to approve this, Mr. McGrath talked about a footpath. Would people in the area still have access? Would we still be able to access that, yes or no? Or
I have to go up to the mic.
Okay, you would. That would be one question. I'll direct the questions here then. And it sounds like the footpath would be on what you referred to as the right side, the berm side. It's very steep. So that's one concern. And it sounds like there's a lot of exceptions, waivers, conditions that would be built into this. And that may be why nothing's ever happened to those lots since 1983. They are beautiful parcels of land, I'm quite sure, but the access is very, very difficult, and you may be blocking access if we don't have a footpath in there for walkers. I've cross-country skied there, I walked my dog there, joggers go through there. Even the 14-foot wide path, if a roadway is usually 22 feet or 20 feet, and clearly that won't fit. I'm not so sure 14 feet will fit. But I'm also concerned that we're referring to it as a roadway. An ancient way, a right of access, that describes it right now. And I have one other question maybe you could answer or direct to Mr. McGrath. You know, this is a tough way to get to that land. You know, you're carving through land and you have this uneven topography up there. Is it possible to get access from Terhune? Obviously, it's hospital-owned property, but that's where the lots are. So you're carving up our new welcome to the neighborhood. They moved in August, and they find out in November that the lovely footpath is now going to be a road or a driveway, or I'm not even sure, I can't even picture it. Is there simply no way that you can get all the variances, all the exceptions made to get to those lots through Terhune, which doesn't have that.
That's not something that's on this application.
No, okay, it was a general question.
That's
Yeah.
not, but that's not something we're
Okay.
here to consider.
That's fine.
And
Go ahead.
I don't know, everyone, it looks like to me that, is there any question that this road is, I'm looking at, saying it's 80 feet wide, and on the plans, are you people disputing that road, that those rights aren't there, or are you?
Well, I don't know what the ancient way or
Well,
the land
plan
court
in front
is.
of us,
Yeah,
and the plan that's submitted shows an 80-foot wide road.
I don't know that it's 80 feet at any point between the driveway and the house at, there's another house, those folks don't live here year-round, so they're not here. It would be 16 Hillcrest. Their front door overlooks this wooded area that you're talking about. What exists right now is a narrow, winding, roughly carved out footpath that fills with water when it rains, and it's a stream down Burnham and weaves all the way down the road. So I'm really surprised that they could do what they want to, but I don't deny the owners of that property want to develop it. I don't know if there's any other way to do it, but this, and again, you'll see it.
Okay.
Okay, and as long as you advertise when you're going to be there, you know, I guess you just go and look at it. The engineer is there. But some of the neighbors that are impacted even more than I am may want to speak or
Well,
just
everyone
be
will have their
present.
chance as soon as you're finished. We'll let the
Okay,
next person.
I'm all finished. All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? Yes, sir, please come up.
Hi, I'm Kurt Bacall. I live at 24 Hillcrest. Just a couple of questions. I'm a bit confused. Can you explain whether or not this new road is actually going to enter Hillcrest or only come to Hillcrest through that driveway? Because I thought I heard it two different ways, and I have a head cold, but I just want to be clear because I have a couple of questions related to that. Is there going to be direct continuity with Hillcrest Drive itself, or will it
I'll
only come
let the
in?
engineer, it looks like to me, but they'll have the engineer answer that for you. Do you have any other questions?
Yes.
Keep rolling them all out.
And the only thing I ask, thank you very much for doing the site visit. As you do the site visit, I ask you that you approach it not only from the Hillcrest Drive side, but that you walk up Burnham and see the confusing curves and the visibility aspect by adding a new road and essentially creating a trifurcation at that intersection. It's already sort of busy with cars, sometimes barely missing each other. I personally think it will create problems. And the last question I have is whether or not the fact that Hillcrest Drive is listed on some town maps as a private road, does that have any implication for approval or not approving this? And that relates to my first question as to whether or not this road comes into Hillcrest rather than into the driveway. because we are listed, I believe, as a private road. And the question is, if we are a private road, who gets to make the decision? Is it just the planning board, or do we have any input? Thank you.
Mr. McGrath, can you answer some of those questions, please?
As a land surveyor, I know that you, lack of use does not abandon a ancient way. And I testified that one of the additions for the hospital, this particular road was an emergency access that got cured later on. And Joe Martini used to go up and remove the boulders every once in a while, but the boulders are there so vehicles don't pass. And I think you remember I said there's a path that remains, remaining path. So there is a remaining footpath, and that's what people are using. And if you look at the topography, you can see where the, shall we say, the trace of the roadway was. It's, as a land surveyor, I put on what the existing recorded plans say. So one of them says there's an existing way there. There is an existing way because the land court said it was an existing way. As far as the rights-of-way are concerned, it goes from, basically, the original grant was from an entity called Falmouth Institute, and that, I believe, is Highfield. And it goes, and this was part of Highfield, the Falmouth Hospital piece. J.K. Lilly, when he donated the Highfield to the town of Falmouth, he donated that triangle to the hospital. So the way that this right-of-way goes, it's 80 foot almost all the way to Sippowisset Road, and then there's a narrow area that's 40 foot wide, that's probably 250 feet. So my client has rights over that way all the way to Burnham, all the way, to Burnham and then out to Sippowisset Road. There's nothing we can do while we will alter the ground. We're not, I suppose we'll be destroying the footpath in a way, but the other option would be much more destructive in that we would move this road into that hill, and that's not, I mean, we're trying to create the minimum amount of disturbance in this area. So the other question is, I wrote them down. The bottom line is I don't see any real issue as far as the entrance for 2 lots where I propose it. And I think if you go out on the ground, you'll agree with me. So Hillcrest Drive is indeed private, but as I just described, the rights that go here go all the way out to Burnham Drive. It's 80 feet except for the small portion. So it is a path. There's a path remaining, just like I described. But just because there's been disuse doesn't mean that the rights of way are abandoned. It takes a court or a judge to rule that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Anyone else? Yes, sir?
My name is John Trowbridge, and I live here. My wife is Nancy Trowbridge, and I'm John Trowbridge. And my question to the surveyor is something I don't understand. It says, near their property line by the center line, and I'd just like an explanation what that means. And then the second question, I'm not quite sure which side. I think it was said that the footpath is going to be maintained? No. Okay. I misunderstood that. Then I just have the one question.
This is a copy of the recorded plan that's at the Registry of Deeds. And what happens is that these are solid lines here. But once it goes past the back line of that lot, which I can't read, The property line is defined differently in that it's the center line of the road from here on when it's, I think it was the Trowbridge land. So the property line here is the center line of the road. There's a very short straight section, and then this is a solid line, and this is a solid line on the subdivision plan. I'd be happy to give the planning board a copy of that plan. I did not think it was important, but I'd be happy to give you one. Did I answer all the questions?
Any more questions or comments? Yes, ma'am, would you like to come up?
Hello, I'm Diane Tetro. I live at 74 Burnham Drive, which is right over here. And I want to point out, as a neighbor, I'm really glad that you're coming for a site visit. Really, really, really glad. Thank you. I'm concerned about this intersection right here. Right now, it is god-awful. People come down Hillcrest Hill awfully fast. When somebody's coming up, it's a private road. The road is probably the most chewed-up road this side of the Mississippi. It really has potholes that go down to hell and come back again. So it is a real rough going in many, many places. And this particular part, people come down with speed. People coming up, the road is not wide enough for 2 cars to pass. So it's a tight, unpleasant, oftentimes unsafe situation. And if you're adding yet another driveway with more cars coming out, I think that it really, the safety aspect of it really needs to be looked at. We live there every day. I know what it's like. And having an extra driveway come through there, I just don't think it will handle it. But you'll be a better judge of that when you go take a look at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I really miss the path. I would really, really miss it. It's part of what we do.
Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, so, yes, go ahead, John.
Just want to ask Mr. McGrath
Please
one other
do.
question. The parcel in question where the locus is?
Yes.
As it currently stands, is it a buildable lot? Would you have the right to build a house there?
Yes, in my opinion, because we'd have to come before you to provide suitable access. You do have an access policy that says that if this was widened to 14-foot gravel, I believe that we would be able to get a building permit for that entire lot.
And it would come out at the same location that you're proposing this road to come out?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the change is there's now 2 lots instead of 1, right? That's what we're talking about.
That's what he's asking for, I think, yes.
Pam?
That driveway, the paved driveway that,
Right there?
right there, is,
Sorry, I keep grabbing the wrong clicker.
so I'm still confused. There is an access there that is for public use? I mean, are you saying that part of that driveway?
What I'm
Is
saying
it-
bluntly is that any citizen of the town of Falmouth can walk, pass and repass, because the original grant was from Falmouth Institute, and that is the land of Highfield.
Right, and that's a public access road.
Well, I'm not, let's put it this way, there are rights in it. We're here to create it as a road.
I'm just concerned about, I haven't heard of a roadway going through a driveway before. A privately owned driveway where there is a public way that crosses a private driveway.
Well, that's the reason that land surveyors say every parcel of land is unique, and this is a unique situation.
Well, there's unique, and then there's something I find a little bit more troubling, which is a driveway. I mean, if all of a sudden I found out that the public could cross over my driveway and there could be traffic literally crossing my driveway, I might be a little bit concerned about that. And
But there's been a row of stakes here for months. There's been a row of stakes in there. So the stakes mean something, obviously.
Well,
Please, if you want to speak, we'll have you come up.
I'm not sure that a row of stakes would indicate to me, unless there were stakes that went across my driveway, that indicated there was public access across my driveway. And I guess it's
Mike, are
something,
you testifying that that 80-foot right-of-way is there?
Yes,
And
the
you surveyed
80-foot
it,
right-of-way is very clearly shown on that subdivision plan. I'm coloring up solid lines. What's in yellow there, or off yellow, that's a copy of a recorded plan. Those solid lines already exist. Isn't that enough warning to people that this could be improved?
Okay, that's good. Well, I think we've heard testimony on that.
So,
Charlotte, you got one more thing?
No, I just want to be clear on it. On the previous drawing that we saw, you could see what was labeled a driveway, and I'd like you to just confirm that that's the driveway that Mr. Ladd was talking about. That's the driveway to his property that he uses. Is that right?
All right, let me go
Yeah,
Let
if
me
you
go
can-
back.
Yeah,
right
thank
there.
you.
This is a paved driveway.
That's-
He chose to build his driveway there. He could have built it down over here where he has frontage. He could have built it anywhere along here. He chose the shortest thing. Now, when we come to improve this, his driveway exists, so why can't I just modify it so that we can have the right turning movement and come in and get two more houses? Anybody that does planning knows that's what, 22 vehicle trips a day? The peak is going to be 4 or 5 vehicle trips an hour. You won't even notice this traffic when it comes down to it. So, yes, his paved driveway's there. It could have been up there. And no matter what, at the Registry of Deeds, it clearly shows, and it's described in his deed, that that road exists.
Right?
So the board's rules for subdivisions require that the applicant submit to the board any instrument that passes over the lands of others. I'll refer that to Attorney Duffy. He will guide your thinking as to what rights the applicant may or may not have and what your authorities are to alter the easement as part of this plan approval.
We'll get our own
Don't
legal opinion on that. We shouldn't worry about that right now.
think, very good.
Okay?
yeah,
That's for our town attorney to tell us.
I'd like something, because
We'll
there
get
is
it.
something innately wrong to me that you lose your driveway and you have a public access across it, that's all.
I see, but I think it's already there. The public access already there. Let's keep continuing.
Let's- Just remind the board, you're listening
Listen.
tonight, it's a hearing tonight, don't draw any conclusions, gather all the evidence, discuss
no
it
more
amongst
comments, we're
yourselves,
just
then
listening.
draw conclusions.
Yes, sir.
Again, Kurt McCall from 24 Hillcrest. I'm still a little confused, but I just have a question for the board. Have any of you ever seen in this town or any other places where an 80-foot wide road comes into a small residential street at a bifurcation where the feeder streets are narrower than the 80-foot road? We've got maybe 20 feet of road that is barely passable, and now we're being told that there's some plan that was made years ago to allow an 80-foot conduit to come down a steep hill and enter those small roads. Has anybody ever seen anything like that, or could it be
We're
a
gonna
mistake?
get a legal opinion on that.
Yeah, I just want to know. Has anybody ever seen anything like that?
Well, roads are laid out different widths. Just because it isn't paved
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's not within a road layout.
Okay.
West Falmouth Highway, I mean, there's all over, that condition exists all over town. Yes, ma'am.
I promise to be very brief on, just to clarify, I know the safety issue was brought up, and if you come in Sipawis Road, it's Kathleen Burke from 30 Hillcrest Drive. It is a cut-through to the hospital. And I know Mr. McGrath mentioned at one point it was a right-of-way to the hospital, or maybe considered emergency access to the hospital. That was prior to the Hillcrest Drive coming in and Myrick Ave. Myrick is a short street that connects Hillcrest with Terhune. And now that is considered emergency access to the hospital, and it certainly is considered a cut-through for the hospital employees. There's steady traffic there in the morning and in the afternoon. So I want you to factor that in. If you go out in the middle of the day to do your site visit, you may not see that. But if you're there in the morning or 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going to see a steady stream of cars. And if this new proposed road was considered emergency access to the hospital, I think that was displaced by Myrick when that was built in the 80s. I'm not sure of the exact timetable. I've lived there since 1999. Okay, so I just wanted to leave that last thought. I don't know, I know you have a lot on your agenda, so
Thank you.
will let us know.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? So Brian, we'll be continuing this?
Okay, so the board should make a motion, or if you're not comfortable, if you want to continue the hearing, you'll need a motion to continue the hearing to December the 12th, 6:30 here in the town hall.
So moved.
Second.
As representing the applicant, I request that the board continue the hearing to December 12th.
We got our own, we're going to do it.
Okay, you can do it on your own motion.
It's on motion, yes. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
And one more procedural, you continue the hearing to the 12th. Now, your view is not a continuation of the hearing. Your view of the site will be posted as a public meeting. It is not a continuation of this hearing, and make sure the board understands that and the public understands that. The purpose of a view is just to become familiar with the environs.
So we won't be taking testimony there. You shouldn't come up, you're welcome to come up and watch us, but all we're there is looking.
They have a right to watch what's going on, and you have a right to ask specific questions to the engineer, but it is not a continuation of the hearing.
So it's not a public discussion, so there are rules for that.
Okay.
When we come back to this meeting, though,
There you go.
it'll be back open again, and the discussion is back on.
There
So
you go.
everyone knows the rules, we're going good, okay?
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's for, so this meeting's
Chairman.
continued?
You want to set a visit before that meeting?
Brian does
Brian.
that.
We'll handle that.
He'll work it out, he'll work out the schedule.
I want to make sure it's center line is staked. I have to discuss it with Mr. McGrath. Okay, so we'll see you on the 12th.
Thank you, everyone who was here for that. We're moving on to the next issue. If you're leaving, please leave quietly. We've got another hearing or planning board discussion.
So just for the board's edification too, on the agenda, I sort of made a mistake. It should be planning board discussion, more in line than decision, when we come down to the Pizogian, Warner, and Service Center. You do have draft motions, but we had some plans come in today
Okay.
for the first two, and we have a draft for the Service Center, a change in your draft. So more for discussion purposes tonight for
So on this first planning board discussion, I need to recuse myself from this, and I believe Pat
And I need to
does too.
recuse
So
myself.
Paul will be acting as chairman.
Pat, too?
I don't think that's ever happened before. So note that down.
Wow.
Would you like to leave?
Yeah, I would, if that's okay.
Two, count two, boom, boom.
This is a planning board discussion on the applicant Bogosian Development site plan review to construct a mixed-use building at 661 Main Street. For the applicant, please.
Good evening, Mr. Dryer, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ahmed Clower Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent the applicant Bogosian Development LLC. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Bogosian, as well as Matt Costa of Cape and Islands Engineering. Hopefully, we'll remain relatively short this evening, but we're back on continuation in order to address some of the improvements or changes that were made to the plan. Specifically, because switching these things is, we alleviated the pinch point here, shifted the parking down to the west in order to alleviate the pinch point here. We have improved the drainage that is going to be located in this area, and we've also increased the landscaping that's going to be located in this area. And lastly, we have met with a number of neighbors in order to address their concerns regarding the right-of-way located on the westerly portion of the driveway. So I know that Mr. Curry was kind enough to share the draft decision last week. I'd be happy to address any questions or concerns the board may have at this time.
Thank you. Comments from the board?
I assume that you solved the issue with the neighbor there to the left who is concerned about the loading zone there?
Well, I don't want to speak for Ms. O'Donnell. She's here this evening, but I know that Mr. Bogosian has met with her both after the last hearing and then earlier this week, and I believe that the concerns have been addressed.
Thank you.
For the record, I'm Mark Bogosian. I'm the developer of this project, and I've had a great meeting with the neighbors, and we're working together to make sure that everybody's going to be happy with the end product.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
I can read it.
I would just ask the board just to defer a motion at this point, because I have to make sure that it cites the right plans, revised, talk to the applicant and the abutter. So I'd ask the board to defer the decision tonight to your meeting of the 12th. It was a preliminary draft. My fault. I should have really allowed the board to further discuss and for the applicant to further present before I drafted a motion.
I was good with it. I was good with it.
I know.
Do we need a motion on that?
No, you do not. I would ask the board to simply table a motion tonight, and then we'll see you again on the 12th. We can review the plans that were delivered today. I can confer with Attorney Clower and revise the motion so the board is, remember what we did a few weeks ago when we voted some plans and that we got them?
Yep.
There you go. So
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
No.
We'll reconvene this on the 12th of December.
Okay.
So you guys coming back in for this?
What's that?
They coming back in? He just recused himself of the Bogosian development, right?
Yes, they should be able to return.
Yeah,
Unless you want them to stay out.
Actually, I really like this 5-member board. It's a lot easier to handle. Oh, never mind.
Oh, wait, before you do that, John has a question.
Oh, sorry.
Back up.
Bye-bye.
You did that on purpose.
Can we do that again?
You'll never get old.
This better be good.
So the applicant got up and spoke a few minutes ago, said that he's working diligently with the neighbors. Before we make our motion, will we have some kind of a report that will show what is being worked on, or what
Well, Ms. O'Donnell's here.
there might be?
Sure, Ms. O'Donnell's here this evening.
I see she's
She
here.
certainly, if she has any comments. The applicant is aware of the 8-foot right-of-way. One of the things we've discussed is solidifying that on a plan to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds so that it's clear where the 8-foot right-of-way lands. As well as, I mean, we understand that it's there and there's obviously there will be no blocking of it, and that is first and foremost the clearest and simplest thing I can say, because it's an existing legal right. Beyond that, before I let Mark jump in, I understand that the plan was one of the biggest things that was discussed in order to eliminate the question moving forward. So, but I'll let Mark and Ms. O'Donnell speak as well.
Thank you.
It's Susan Olaf.
Olaf, I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. Mark and I have met on several occasions, and we are working out the tight parking area. So I just want to let you know that we're doing that.
Good.
Thank you. That's very good.
We've met with additional neighbors as well, so there's a lot of optimism. We're going to try to actually make it so some of the residential homes, we both have the commercial properties, but some of the residential homes on the backside, we're going to try to do some plantings and some more fencing to try to create it so it's more of a residential setting at the back. If you look at over here, this has grown to be larger, so I talked about planting a little bit on each side of their easement, so it separates it from our commercial tenants to the people that were going into the driveways. And they seem to be very excited about that, and I think we get some letters of support.
So one additional comment to add, this area here between the closest parking area and the property boundary here, at the closest point is from the rear of the parking spot to the property line, 23 feet, of which 8 feet is the right of way. At this point here, from the further south property line, from the further south parking spot, rather, parking stall, so the property line is almost 32 feet. So there's pretty substantial amount of space there. It's not quite as narrow, I think, as it might appear on the plan. That being said, Mr. Bogosian and Ms. O'Laughlin, my apologies, are certainly working together in order to make sure that that does not become an issue and that there's an amicable solution moving forward.
So my question is, working with the neighbors, this neighbor in particular, whatever resolution they come to, will that be part of our decision?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Revise the plans, revise the motion.
As a neighbor, I would want that to be part of the decision.
Right, that's why it's a discussion tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
And if I may, a question. Brian, would you want that 8-foot right-of-way shown on the plan that we submit? We can resubmit that.
As something illustrative, you know, this is just a site plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully we can resolve all this and see a motion on the 12th.
Too late.
I would be happy to continue with that. And Brian says he likes a smaller board.
So, Brian, this is also a discussion, the next one, right?
Should be, we have received a revised plan today, so allow the applicant to present it, comment, and then I can redraft a motion for the
Okay.
board.
So we have a new plan for the applicant. Mr. Ahmet.
Thanks, Mr. Fox, members of the board. I've only practiced and been here for 44 years, so I'll never catch up with Mike McGrath. This is the site plan for the Warner property on Woodruff Lane off of Quistit Avenue. We discussed it last week. I don't want to repeat anything that was done last week. I became aware yesterday when Mr. Curry called me that there was concern about the interior arrangement of the proposed accessory apartment. My guess is I'll be able to advance this. Yeah, perfect. Well, it would be nice if it was turned around. So this is the 600 square foot apartment that we are now showing. I see that and it shows an entrance from the bathroom so that someone in this common area or the owner's recreation area could access the bathroom. And it shows the entrance to the 600 square foot apartment here. And the concern apparently is that this isn't just a 600 square foot apartment. It has direct access to other living space, and so it's more than 600 square feet. I don't necessarily agree with that conclusion because this door can be locked, this door can be locked, and the tenants in this apartment, or it could be the owner, because as you know, the accessory apartment, so-called, could be occupied by the owner or the tenant who could rent out the larger house. In any case, Here is a space that has access to other interior space because of the particular circumstances. This is an existing, legally constructed building with 1,600 square feet of space on this floor. We have a large lot, almost 1.25 acres, I believe. This structure has its own septic system, separate from the septic system for the larger house. It seems like an ideal place to have an accessory apartment. And if you think about the reasons for the accessory apartment bylaw, it's to create more housing opportunities that can be less expensive, and particularly in the Quisitor Woods Hole area that has merit. Okay. So I think that this is a 600 square foot apartment accessed through common space, just as one might go into a house, into a hallway with closet space or other common space off it, and then into an apartment. But I don't want to get hung up on that. And we have submitted a plan today in response to this concern, which we would be satisfied if that's what would get approved. Now, my guess is it didn't get on the no, so I assume it did not get
The
added.
board members hopefully should have it in their package.
Yeah, but you know, hopefully all.
Nope.
So
Okay, so-
what we've done is pretty simple.
I'm sorry, my apologies. We do have that copy of that plan. It didn't make it to the
I
computer.
received it by email today. Did the other board members get it?
I have copies.
Okay. So I apologize for that.
That's it.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I think I can share. Actually, this shows access to the deck is what is coming in. That's what I needed to have. Not through there, and this door could go away, it still works.
So what the plan before you,
Unless you have to have it.
the paper plan before you shows, is that we've just made this a solid wall, and this a solid wall, put an entrance from this area over here. This perhaps would become the kitchen area, and the bedroom could be here. An entrance onto here onto a deck, and just connect that deck right there to the existing deck, so that this space would have its own exterior access. If you recall from the photographs, this side of the structure is where the garage doors are. This side is a grassy area.
It's different.
It's probably 6 or 7 feet off the ground here, so you need a deck, and you just connect over to here. In the plan that you have before you that I sketched after talking to my client, I do show a door between the two spaces that's identified as for emergencies only, otherwise locked. That could be specified. In other words, we don't have to have access through this part of the existing structure to get to the separate, totally private proposed apartment. I don't know if the building department will require a second means of egress other than this one. For emergency purposes, I think there shouldn't be an objection to being able to get out of this space and through to the outside. We would only use it for that purpose, and if we can't do that, we'd have to figure out a different means of egress. One possibility is another stairwell into this space from the garage below. It seems to be an expensive and unnecessary fix for the second means of egress. We may be able to use some kind of a window with a drop-down set of ladder arrangement, whatever is required by the building department, if anything, that's what we would want to do. But the point is, I understood this was a significant concern. I think it was misplaced, but we would be satisfied to make these changes so that it is a clearly separate set of rooms for an accessory apartment. Thank you.
So, Bob, your testimony is you're not sure whether that secondary means of egress is required or not by the building department.
That's correct. I would suggest that if it's allowed, it only be allowed, and if you think that it's an appropriate condition and required to meet the bylaw, which I don't agree, since it can be locked, and therefore the space is a separate private apartment. But if necessary, we could install that, but only for that purpose. And, of course, one could go to some extreme measures. You could alarm the door, so it only, it's truly an emergency egress. It is not an entrance. Or you and the Board of Appeals can simply condition that it's for that purpose. Again, I don't think that having access from one part of a building arranged as an apartment into another part of the building for egress or access violates the terms of the accessory apartment bylaw. You won't find any provision in there whatsoever that would prohibit this, but I understand that all situations were not probably contemplated or thought through when the bylaw was written. This, and I'm aware of other cases, is where you have an existing accessory building where the apartment is only intended to be a portion of it. There should be no problem with that. It might be the second floor of a garage where the access or one of the means of access is through the garage. That doesn't make it part of the apartment. And that's really what this is as well. But I don't want to make it, I don't want to argue the issue so much because we can live with the arrangement you made. We're trying to create the ability to have an accessory apartment, and if it requires exterior access as we show on the plan, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Brian, you're going to be working on a decision?
Yes, and I'll
And
meet
we'll
with,
have discussion before that decision another night?
I'll meet with the building commissioner. Now, my sense is you'll have a motion on the 12th.
Okay, and
Right.
you'll find out about this issue, whether it's required or not?
I'll discuss
The
it.
building commissioner will weigh in, and then we'll have an opportunity to discuss it amongst ourselves at that point before we vote. Is that?
Sure, you always have an opportunity to
No, I'm
discuss.
just
but-
explaining to everybody, that's what we're going to do. Everybody okay with that?
Well,
Go ahead, Bud.
I think we kind of got into the weeds with this because we're not granting the building permit for this.
We're not supposed to be.
And,
It's a question that we need to
And our purview is the criteria for the outside, the design review. Does it comport with the existing property? Does it alter it enough significantly that it doesn't fit anymore?
And the building department says it meets the code, so it doesn't, not us.
And we also are concerned with parking, that it's not going to be different than would be for a single-family dwelling. So those are the only two things that I see us having any say on at this point. And the ZBA will have their input into whether it comports with the rest of the bylaw as far as square footage and how it fits onto the size of the lot with the existing house and with the building commissioner, whether it meets all the regulations that he's going to require. So for us, I think our part is fairly simple. The only difference now is that there is a deck being added to one side of the dwelling that wasn't there before. So that would be the only thing that we would be looking at. Does that deck significantly change the look of the building, and does it make it not comport with the existing structures that are on the property?
Okay, Charlotte?
In light of what Bob's saying, do we need to delay?
Well, yes, we do. We've learned that we don't go too quickly,
Yes,
that it's best to wait,
In what-
get it written, and then have the decision. When we jump ahead, sometimes we made mistakes, so we'll let Brian finish his
And one of
job.
your findings must be that it comports with the bylaw, the percentage, the square footages.
Right.
You don't want to approve something as a plan review that goes off to the Board of Appeals and is in conflict.
Right. So Brian will resolve those issues, bring it back to us,
And we'll get it right.
and we'll get it right. Okay, thank you. Continuing, on the next one is going to be a decision, is that correct, Brian?
I do have a revised motion for the board for the Family Service Center, not Senior Center. I have that on my brain. So you disregard the motion that's in your package.
Okay, would you pass it up?
That's for you, and I'm hoping that there's enough here. I'm sure there is. Will you just pass that down, please?
So you can hand you one.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting this last minute.
Have one.
It's okay, the beginning. We'll get better at this as we go along.
Yeah.
I hope. That's for you. Go ahead, Bob.
And I'll just highlight that change. The change is in the 5th paragraph under your findings. Septic system location was first cited as the reason why you would defer any nitrogen-enhanced removing septic systems. It's actually the philanthropic use. It's not subject to the provisions, 'cause it's not a commercial development. That's the difference.
Okay.
I have a question on that.
Let's let them read it first.
11/2017 draft, motion that the planning board vote to approve the application of the Falmouth Service Center, Inc., under Article 39, Site Plan Review of the zoning bylaw for a plan entitled Existing Condition Plan for 141 Sandwich Road prepared for 141 Sandwich Road, Inc., in Falmouth, prepared by Falmouth Engineering, Inc., dated September 12, 2017, scale 1 inch equals 20 feet, 3 sheets, along with floor plans and elevations entitled New Additions and Renovations for Capital Realty and Development, Inc., 141 Sandwich Road, dated August 28, 2017, scale 3/16 inch equals 1 foot 0 inches, sheets A1 through A3, with the following findings and conditions. Findings. The applicant proposes to redevelop a 1.3 acre parcel of land at 141 Sandwich Road, map number 34040120000A, raise all existing structures except for an 1,800 square foot retail building with 2 second floor apartments, and build a 6,480 square foot metal building with the associated parking, drainage, and landscaping. The site is located in a split zone district, B3 and AGB districts. The site lies within the Great Pond Coastal Overlay District. The applicant has responded to referrals from the Falmouth Engineering Division dated October 11th, 2017, November 11th, 2017, and Falmouth Water Department dated November 6, 2017, in the form of a letter from Ahmet Clower LLP dated November 9th, 2017, addressing concerns raised by both referrals. The Planning Board has reviewed the proposed floor plans and elevations drawn by DHS Design, Inc., and finds the elevations appropriate for this area's setting. The applicant's attention is directed to the Water Department's referral dated November 6, 2017. Each occupied structure on a parcel of land must have a separate water service with meter. A separate submittal to the Water Department is required for review and approval of a water service to the proposed building. Although the parcel is located in the Great Pond Coastal Pond Overlay District, the philanthropic use is not subject to its provisions, as it is not a commercial development pursuant to Section 240-98 of the zoning bylaw. Conditions. The plan shall be constructed as approved. Any changes shall be reviewed by the Planning Board to determine if modification of this decision is necessary. Pursuant to Section 240-183B of the zoning bylaw, no permit for full or partial occupancy shall be issued until the Planning Board is satisfied that the condition of this approval and predecessor approvals have been met.
Okay. Discussion.
Need a second.
In a second. For discussion, any further discussion from the board? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like clarification, please. The original draft said is that the septic system located outside the overlay district. The new one says that it's not subject to provisions, that it's not a commercial development. But this is going to be owned by someone else, and that is rented to a philanthropic use. Does that make a difference? If the philanthropic use goes away, what implication is that? Or should you add the phrase that was taken out here, located outside the district?
Well, the first phrase was a mistake, is an error. The septic system would be in the district. That would be the controlling factor. However, philanthropic uses, subject to a special permit in an agricultural zone, can be, are not listed as a use subject to the provisions of the Coastal Pond Overlay District. It's subdivisions, 5 lots or more, commercial development subject to site plan review, and special permit uses within 2,500 feet of water bodies that aren't mapped. So this is neither a 5-lot subdivision, it is not a commercial use as defined, and it's in a mapped recharge area, so that section about special permit uses falls away too. So the bylaw has no standing, is what we're saying here. The first finding was in error. The septic system is in the parcel, but the use is not subject to the provisions. See what I'm
What if
saying?
the use changes?
If the use changes, it would then be subject to the issuance of a new occupancy permit or use and occupancy permit by the building commissioner.
Change of use form, yeah.
So you would probably see it then. If you're more comfortable in your decision saying any change of use other than a philanthropic must return to the board, that's a fine addition.
That would be a finding or a condition? Kind of, either.
Well, that's why we have it down there that it shall be constructed as approved. Any changes come back to the board. So if the use changes, it comes back to the board. I've always understood that, but if you want to be more clear about that, you could put that in there.
Thank you.
It's up to the board.
No, I've always been clear on that.
So I. Any other? So we have a motion and a second.
Check with John first before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just a question on the change of use. What would be in the purview of this board? Just the septic system, or would it be another site plan review, or?
You would come back to the board. If you see it, you would then make a decision whether a modification of the decision is necessary. And once it is, then they would reapply to you under site plan review. It might be the only thing you look at is the denotification issues, but they would reapply to the board. And it would be open to your purview through the entire bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And do we need to make any other findings, like parking is adequate and landscaping? And I mean, he did a really nice job with this plan, or compared with what's there right now.
You can, but the first paragraph is that you approve the plans, up here.
Okay.
It's implicit that you find them acceptable. If you want to highlight something, that's fine. It's up to the board.
Well, from here, it goes to the Board of Appeals, correct?
Yes, it's currently also in front of the Board of Appeals for the use. Now,
Okay.
the difference is your plan review is not really a special permit, which allows the use to go for special permits, all uses. Yours is more of a design, site planning and whatnot.
We're doing a plan and a design review.
I think I just wanted to emphasize what a nice plan it is. And
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
But
Very well done.
let the record show.
So, are we ready to vote? All set?
a
John's,
real improvement to the neighborhood.
yeah.
Definitely.
So we have a motion and a second. We finished our discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you. Very good. Next is planning board decision. The applicant, John Raposa and Diane Raposa, site plan review for an accessory apartment within the existing detached structure at 307 Old Barnstable Road. What do you got? Notices.
Public meeting notice was issued on November 17, 2017, and 9 abutters were notified by regular mail.
So just to remind the board members, we're doing a site plan and a design review. The building code issues and all other issues are left up to the building department, and we don't enter into those.
Yes and no.
The interior walls and whatnot.
Right.
For the applicant, yes, thank you.
Yes, I'm the owner, John Boza. And obviously we're gonna have this thing approved. I have my daughter in there now living, and it's for the family, basically.
Do you have a plan showing the size of it, the interior space?
Yes, I did it.
Do we have one? It's in the package.
It's in the package.
It's on the table. It's true. It's on the table.
It's on the table.
Well, we have this.
Careful with these, putting this. I don't see it.
Yes, that's it.
Oh, wait.
That's the only thing
that
that's
one's
yours.
not- yeah, just this.
There's only two.
There's no floor plan or...
Okay.
Well, it's okay. I'll just snuggle up here.
I think,
Here we go, here we go. This is televised.
Easy.
okay, this is a by right use, but this board has to determine that it meets the bylaw. We need to see the square footage, a plan showing the size of the main house and the size of the apartment, because the bylaw talks about a relationship between those sizes. We have to pass judgment on that.
Excuse me a moment. You should have, my understanding is, excuse me a moment, Corey? My understanding is you had something?
Corey, do we have floor plans?
Is there a floor plan?
We have a plot.
Apparently not at this time, so perhaps the applicant can at least
Yeah.
describe to the board what it is they like to present, and we can
Okay.
have a meeting and
Try to
get some more
describe to
information.
us what you're doing. How big is this accessory apartment?
It is,
Well, Constable.
square footage is 691.
How big is the main house?
Is 1794 square feet. It's a great ranch, which you should have pictures of it somewhere.
We're gonna need you to come back. You're going to need to show us that you comply with the bylaw on size. Have you read the bylaw?
Yeah, but I know that, that's why I got square footage of the house plus the,
What percentage, what size, as a percentage, what,
I gotta have, I can't go over 40%,
right.
which I just made that.
So you're telling us that you're not over 40%,
Yeah,
you've done it.
40%.
It'll be helpful if you showed a plan that actually showed that.
I can show you the floor plan of the apartment.
And what we need is a floor plan of the apartment and a floor plan of the house, and we can look at it and say, yeah, that meets the bylaw.
Yeah, we had given them to the board.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, apparently that information didn't reach here tonight, but there's information here that the applicant has.
Yeah, this is what we needed to see.
They can pass it out, there you go.
We're missing
We had
something.
given them before, and I don't know about people.
We didn't get copies of it.
No.
I don't know.
That's the inside of the apartment, and upstairs, this has got 8 frames in it, so the livable space is actually built because of the,
Right.
because of the square footage.
No.
Okay, which lot is yours?
This is our main house.
Okay,
House,
okay.
and that's the ranch, it goes this way, to here, to here.
And the
Okay.
accessory apartment is inside the main house?
Right, no, no, no,
Okay.
it's outside.
Okay,
That's separate.
okay, so it's So it's in a detached.
Okay, I thought we were saying inside the structure.
No.
Didn't I see it?
Within an existing detached.
An existing, pardon me, I was confused.
Yeah, that's been looking for years, and that's gonna be.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you now.
Okay.
Okay,
This end of the table didn't get it.
Right.
So could you point out your house and the detached house that we're talking about?
This is the house, my house, and this is the barn.
And that's going to be the accessory?
Yes, right through here. This was behind it, that was a house barn before that I tore down.
Yeah,
This is the actual one right here.
thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so we can have you back up at the podium. We
I'm
can
sorry.
ask you some questions.
I'm sorry for the confusion.
No, we're getting it.
So the accessory apartment is within that footprint?
Yes.
The footprint is kind of an L shape?
Yes, exactly.
So you're not adding, you're not putting an L onto that?
Nothing. No,
That's-
no, that was
okay.
there before
So
it
it's, so it's
was a-
completely
was a-
contained within that, okay.
My father was a carpenter, he's the one that did all that work.
And,
Those-
and where is the parking going to be for this?
I gave him a bunch of pictures.
Yeah, you can,
The whole thing, it's
up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There's a clicker on this, on the podium. You can
Right,
just
so they
scroll
can
right
walk it
through
through.
the pictures you gave us.
The rest of it, that is all parking right up to the door.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, see.
There you go.
I didn't realize we had either side.
Maybe he doesn't have to come back.
Okay, that's the side looking at it, and my house is way in the background.
Okay, so this is the dwelling, or the building that you're gonna put the accessory apartment in?
Yes.
Okay,
Let me see. That's another corner of it, looking at from my house, I'm back further.
okay,
I took a shot at the
okay.
west side.
So,
That's the back,
okay,
and that's that one you had. Now,
okay,
here's my house
okay,
over there. That's where the apartment is. It goes this way, around alongside my house, to the front and out,
okay,
then leaves my lot.
okay,
And this is all gravel under here. And if it rains a lot, this puddle just shows up and never get into the driveway. Because this is a lot of room into here.
mhm,
And it's just a gradual grade. It's basically a flat lot.
okay,
And even my house, when it rains, it just, there's a little water that goes through here like that and then disappears in a couple days.
okay.
There's never anything stands around.
So, the parking is in front of the,
Yeah,
Right
this
there.
would be the front.
that's, okay,
This
so,
would be the front, and this is all parking. Actually, this is all gravel.
yeah,
They-
okay.
And they can go in here.
And the road is up towards,
Right here,
the
goes this
street?
way, goes
Yeah,
up Old
okay,
Barnstable Road, goes up.
It's way up there.
okay,
So this structure's not even visible from Old Barnstable Road?
It's impossible.
okay.
Do you share a septic system?
No, I got my own septic system in this house. And the other one is, that's another shovel, the back front one.
Okay,
This is all rough plastic. I guess that's it for, this is in the front, that's what it is, you can park four cars actually.
And so your testimony is this structure is only 40% of the size of the main structure?
It is.
Well, less than
A little
40.
less, what stays
That-
is the angle of the roof.
I got you. That's why it looks so big, but
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they don't count all that.
No, there's a bedroom right there. There's a bedroom there. And the atrium goes this,
In this drawing, that's what they're attempting to show, that the slope doesn't count, that they're just counting this. I'm understanding this now. Sorry for the confusion in the beginning, it took me a while.
I'm not much help here, but,
No, I think I got it. I got it
yeah,
now.
see that roof goes up,
Doesn't even show the address of this place.
so there's a.
So,
oh, okay.
so it looks to be a lot bigger, but the livable space is what we're counting, and because of it's less than
because of
the slope, the assessors don't count it either.
10 years ago.
on both sides.
You can't tell where it is here, and you can't tell.
The septic is
What the
right in
name
front
of it
of the left of that car.
One is a
There's
record
two
of
leach
those.
pits,
Okay, right here.
which I have,
Where's the
I
address right
have
here?
It's a
inspected by,
Board of Health issue, though,
yeah, that is.
not ours.
But I have inspected by a Title V inspector, but it's still right.
Okay.
So, are there any proposed changes to the outside?
No, nothing, not at all, no way.
Okay.
That's the original building. That's the original building.
Okay. And is there an existing kitchen and bathroom and all that there now?
It shows it on the plan this summer.
Okay.
So this is,
Okay.
that's why there's no issue on Hardy Walls, it's its own freestanding
It's a
building.
freestanding, okay.
So this is exactly why we passed the bylaws, so this is what we're looking for.
That's why,
Yeah.
after this went through,
Okay.
I'm trying to do it.
I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
How is everybody else? John, you okay?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, it took me a while to get, Paul?
I'm good.
Charlotte? Motion to approve? Right?
No.
Let us review the
I'll review,
material
you
that
make
was.
it, write a decision,
Right.
and then we vote.
Oh, you guys are
Yeah,
trainable?
sorry. You gotta come back another night. We've made a mistake voting on the same night before. It's better for us to digest things and come back and approve it, but it looks like everything's going in your direction.
Lots, a huge lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what the town planner will do is he'll draft up a motion for us, and then we present the motion, we have a discussion, and then we vote on it.
Okay.
So,
Send a letter to us, we have to go back again.
no, wait a
This
minute.
goes to the ZBA.
Well, it's still,
This is a
We do, we
we're still
finish,
not,
yes,
Right.
we don't get the
Right.
special, we do the site plan
We're
review,
doing the site
and then it
plan.
goes to the ZBA.
right,
You-
Gotta go to the ZBA.
You gotta
Yeah.
go to the
I
ZBA.
gave them all the same paperwork.
yeah,
Okay, good.
but we still have to have.
You can watch us on
motion for the
television
site
if you
plan.
want the next time.
Oh, I don't have to show you?
We're not gonna have a presentation, right?
No, unless you want to. Would you like us?
No, we're trying to make it easier, not harder.
Well, that's the whole idea of it.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's what I'm getting.
Just make your popcorn and watch it on TV.
Good show.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry I didn't catch it right away.
No, that's
Yes,
kind of my fault, I didn't explain it right.
yes, Paul?
this is going to be on December 12th as well?
Yes.
Okay,
But you'll send a letter, let us know, is that how this works, after, and write
Yep.
something?
December
Yes.
12th.
Okay,
Yes, a letter goes to the building commissioner, a copy will go to you.
okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you.
okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
a little slow on the uptake on that one, I don't know what. I didn't understand it at all from the beginning. I just read it wrong. Is that,
It got worse when the first picture went up.
yeah, it looked too big, I didn't understand it. And then now the slope and everything. This agenda doesn't have a second
We're
page.
doing Caputo.
Okay. Next is the applicant Kenneth Caputo, site plan review to construct a new 5,114 square foot urgent care medical building located at 40 Davis Straits. Do we have a new design here? Waiting to see.
We do.
Hold on.
We have two new designs.
Yeah, there somewhere.
That's multiple choice.
Looks better. So this space here is this here. Okay, all right, let's let him go.
He's getting there.
I think it's there. You don't think so?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Ken Caputo with Caputo Project Delivery. With me tonight is Mr. Tom Scott from Scott Griffin Architects and Mr. Peter Bassett from Atlantic Investments. A couple of business orders quickly. I believe you have in your packet the building design schemes 1 and 2 that we submitted just before Thanksgiving. We are presenting scheme 1 here. Tom will also take you through, we call it scheme 3. Our tenant has respectfully requested that we withdraw from discussion on scheme 2. He came to us after the submittal and indicated to us that that scheme is not going to work for him for various reasons. So I apologize for that confusion. And with your permission, I'd like to provide you handouts of our presentation tonight, so you have a hard copy of it as well. That would be acceptable.
Yes.
Okay.
So just for,
We have,
Excuse me just a second.
yes, sir.
Brian?
just for the record, so you're referring to the A202 is off the table?
Yes.
Just for the record, thank you.
So, with that matter behind us for now.
Are these different?
We have,
Yes, it only has 201.
there's a series of, you'll see it in the presentation, Scheme 1, what we call 3, not to be confused as a modification to 2, and then some comparisons so that we can put them side by side for you, and you can see all of the variations. Our purpose here for this discussion tonight, this is one in a series of what we hope to be at least 2 discussions leading to a third one where we're all on the same page and have come to agreement. The purpose of discussion tonight is really focused on architecture. That is why this is a black and white presentation. We'd like to have Tom take you through the various elements between the 2 schemes that you do have, because a lot of it comes down to material. And the mix of material to the architectural design, which is significantly different than what we have presented in the past. The mix of the material we think is important, but it's also a matter of opinion as to preference. And we can do a lot of different things with the building design that we presented with material. So we wanted to show you how we can vary that material between various elements that Tom will explain. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Tom so he can walk you through each one. If it's clearer, we do have these on presentation board as well. It's a little dark in this presentation, so we may have to bring some clarity to some of the elements by using the words. Okay?
But that's what we have here, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Tom Scott, architect with Scott Griffin Architects. And I'll run through the different scenarios, and we have a couple of comparison sheets at the end that I think will be very helpful for you to see the differences between where we are today versus where we were a few weeks ago. This Scheme 1, one of the notable things right off the bat is the height of the building. We've scaled down the right side of the building from 26 feet down to 20 feet to the top portion of the roof. The main structure, which almost appears to be, a building that could have been there and then was added on to it. We're trying to give the impression that the building, has some history or some value or some, I guess, respectfulness to the Falmouth architecture and what you deem important to the Falmouth, unique brand. So this particular scheme, we've also lowered that structure by 2 feet. We did want to keep the peak roof element on the 2 sides facing Dillingham and...
Can you use the pointer, please?
Yes,
We
I
have the
can.
bright pointer, if you could.
Is that this?
Yeah, that's
Yeah, there it
it.
is,
That'd be
yeah.
great, because
Okay.
people at home can see what you're talking
Oh.
about too. That's why
Yeah.
that's there.
Excuse the fact that this is a little bit dark. I think the images you have in front of you are a little bit better, and the ones here are better as well. It's hard to tell, but this base element here is brick in this scheme. It's a red
We can
brick.
see it, yeah, it's labeled.
Brick. Again, this portion of the building has been lowered significantly, as well as this portion of the building here. This was lowered by 6 feet. So we're down to 20 feet for that height. We've also tried to balance the architecture by adding another peak roof element on this end to break up the facade so it's not a long, monotonous facade. So we've done that. We've introduced the 6/6 double hung style windows with wide trims, shutters, and head casings. All of the We had some storefront here originally. We've eliminated that. We've gone to a series of ganged, double-hung windows in that area, as well as this area facing the Davis Straits. We've gone to shake. On this particular scheme, we have shakes, which is a red cedar shake on the entire upper portion of the building, including the gables. We've added a small signature window at that location, and then we've got a location here where we hope we'll be able to place the sign for the
Show that again?
The tenant here.
Right there, okay.
Yeah. And we've also, the building has a significant overhang around the edges, and that is continuous around all sides of the building. And within that overhang is going to be lighting that will illuminate the facade on all four sides of the building. So you'll be able to see this building very well at night. And it'll be a good safety feature as well to have the illumination around the entire building. I think in conjunction with the site lighting that Ken had provided previously, the overall site will be very well lit. The next scheme. Okay, the next scheme, this is our scheme 3. Some slight modifications. We did change the water table here, and we introduced some clapboards at the lower portion of the building here, with the shakes only up in the gable ends of the building. We've introduced a signature window here, the round window in this location on the two sides that face Dillingham and Davis Straits. But again, we've kept the 6/6 windows throughout on all sides of the building. The overhang is very similar. It's a very generous overhang. It will be fully lit all around the building. We eliminated the brick piers that supported these column elements, and these will now drop all the way to the ground. Again, it's kind of depends on the preferred architecture, I guess, of the board, and but we're kind of willing to go either way with scheme 1 or 3. Okay, there we go. Some other modifications.
Could you go back and forth quickly for scheme 1 and scheme 3? That was helpful. You can see some changes. That's what I wanted to see. Thank you.
You'll also see these together.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got them grouped together.
Okay,
The slide.
continue. Yep.
We've also, in this scheme, we made this peaked element a slightly larger. I think you can see it. Oops. It kind of grew a little bit. The columns got a little bit wider. We were trying to get the scale of this to be a little more in proportion with the scale of this. Again, as an element to just break up this long facade on Dillingham. The roof would be all a dark gray or charcoal shingle, 3-tab type of a shingle. Let's see. But again, in this scheme, the same thing applies. The height has been reduced of this element and of this element as well. This is at 20 feet as well. And this is down to, I think it's 32.8. So it's roughly 2 feet lower than it was previously. So what we did here is we've got a comparison sheet, so you can see scheme 1 on top. This is the Dillingham and the Route 28 elevation, and then scheme 3 on the bottom. So now you can kind of visually compare them, top to bottom, and you can see the differentiation between the architectural materials, the brick water table here, the gable element has some modifications to it from this scheme to this scheme. This was slightly larger in this scheme than it was in this scheme. We eliminated the brick piers in this scheme, brought the wood columns all the way to the ground. Pretty much that's most of the architectural changes. We also provided that same comparison for scheme 1 and 3. on the west and south elevations, which is the side elevation and rear elevation. The rear, what we call the rear elevation, actually faces the 99, which is the adjacent restaurant and the adjacent lot. So you can see this element, although it looks tall, is at the other end of the building. We probably should have graded this out a little bit because it won't be as close to you when you're on this side of the building. So the scale of the building on this end, I think, is more appropriate with the building that's adjacent, which is the 99 building. And then just lastly, we decided to take the original design, put it on the sheet, and then show you scheme 1 and scheme 3 so you could compare for yourself the significant differences that we have architecturally, not only in height, but in materials, and the vernacular of the building and the architecture of the building. I think it's been significantly improved, and it's more in line with the Falmouth style of architecture. So we've got this sheet, and then we have this sheet as well, which shows the Davis Straits elevation. And that's all the sheets that we have. So, you know, we're open to comments, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Charlotte?
I want to thank you for taking the trouble, one, to give us a presentation side by side in so many different ways to make it clear how the design has changed, and two, to thank you for paying so close attention to the comments that you received. This is a real effort for us to come together, and I applaud that. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a further, I guess it's a question. Having presented this multiple choice, it could only get more multiple choice here. Is it possible to have bits of this and bits of that, so that if there are a question about the materials in what's being called Scheme 1, for example, the brick water table, I think you called it. Right. To remove that and have the building either all shingle or the lower portion all clapboard. Is that something you'd be open to?
Yes,
To not have brick?
Yes, the purpose of showing you the various material combinations is to have an open discussion about if this combination that you see in this design, or maybe a flip from, can we go to the comparison one on this slide? Yeah. Maybe a transition of, okay, we have an element down here in Scheme 3, if it was applied up in Scheme 1, we're wide open to that discussion. We really want to work with the board to use the materials to bring the effect, the visual effect, and help this vision forward for the Davis Straits corridor.
Thank you.
Pam?
So since I was probably one of your harshest critics, I'm going to ditto what Charlotte said, because this is such a vast improvement. And I think one of these, and I agree with Charlotte, what I'd like to do is take one from column A and two from column B, and have, if it were up to me, I like the upper left with the break in the roof where it peaks. But I mean, I think the clapboard looks less, I think when you put in too many elements, it just starts to look a little bit.
So you like it having all one texture?
Talk to me about the color of the brick, because I'm trying to envision, okay, these shingles aren't going to get gray. And what color is the brick? We're trying to see that. They got that long brick wall. We're trying to figure out what's that going to look like.
We thought it should be really a New Englandy brick. It should have a red tone to it, a deep red.
So and then the shingles will be gray, so we have a red and gray palette coming there.
Yeah.
Boston red pavers.
So getting back to that, I like the look of the clapboard, but I like the design of Scheme 1, especially on the left, the Davis Straits view. The top has a nice line to it, I think. The bottom part is just too much. I don't know what to call it, but I like the upper left, I like the look, but I love the clapboard. And I'm just wondering, I know on here it says that's where you're looking to put the sign, and wondering whether you would consider not putting a large sign on the building, but putting it in front of the building, similar to what the other,
On a separate pylon, we'd have to go back with that, but I know that right now, we don't want to deviate from the tenant signage scheme. He has to apply, he's over the minimum criteria, so he automatically has to apply for a signage permit. That's a process, we'd like to get past the architecture and then have that process unfold. He's going to have requests before the town on his signage, I'm sure. And it's ours, that is a process unto itself for site signage. But
well, I'm sure you had to do a lot of convincing, and good for you, because this is what fits in, I think, with Falmouth. And so now you can have a whole new branding for Massachusetts.
Pat, you had a question?
Just a comment. I like the sizing to the left of that, let's call it a dormer. If that sizing could be brought up onto scheme 1 and you have a window put in there so that it somewhat matches both the Dillingham and the Davis Straits.
do you like the circular window?
No,
Okay.
I do not like
That's
the
fine.
circular
That's
window.
what that's the discussion. We want to
Yeah,
get everything
no,
we
that
can.
I don't like, but what I was saying is if you could bring that, let's set up, call it a dorm or whatever you want to call it, the little peak, and put it up in place of the smaller peak on the left-hand one, the Davis Straits, and put a window in there.
Here, this.
Should like
move
that.
up
Yeah,
here.
yeah, I think that would be more balanced,
Okay.
Davis Straits to Dillingham in design. I do not have a problem with, I like the shingles, I do not have a problem with the brick in itself, but I kind of like the stone from your prior, if you're going to do the shingles and the gray stone, rather than the red brick. But,
Yeah, I mean, we think it's more traditional to use the brick.
yeah,
You know,
Brick Kiln Road.
Do you like the clapboard without
Yeah.
any brick or stone?
Yeah.
I know that
I do.
was, one suggestion was to bring the clapboard design up onto scheme 1.
Right.
I think what I don't like is the split, though, between the shingles and the clapboard. I like one or the other, because you've got enough windows in there and enough design elements to make it too busy when you put shingles combined with clapboard.
I agree with you. I didn't
Okay.
even, I don't know why I wasn't looking at that, but I agree.
Yeah, so.
It's hard to tell from these drawings too, because you don't see the color of the detail.
The clapboard, is that something that you're going to have to paint, or is that one of these, like, the concrete clapboard that is just, if you don't have to deal with it?
If it were clapboard, we'd probably use a
Hardy board.
Okay.
And it would be painted with.
Concrete
real-
painted,
real
yeah.
paint.
Okay, because I'm looking also at maintenance of the structure. And you want as little maintenance as you can get, I would think, and shingles, obviously, they go for a long time.
Yeah, so if it were shingle, we'd just leave it to weather gray.
Mhm.
But if it's clapboard, we would have to paint it.
Yeah, 25 years if you get them pre-painted.
Yeah,
So,
that's,
Yeah, those concrete ones.
Yeah,
last
I mean, that's what we did on
Charlotte?
Glenwood.
Paul?
They're going to have to maintain the building in any event, whatever
Mhm.
material
Yeah.
it is. I don't know that you would agree with this, but I've found buildings that have so many different materials on them just don't age well. And mixing the brick with the shingle or brick with the clapboard, I would not like to see it be that way. It would be far preferable to me that would go with scheme 1, more or less as it is, no brick, and either clapboard or shingle below, either one. I particularly like the arcaded effect that's going to be facing the street. That looks really good. I'm concerned that if you make the gables larger, as was suggested, you're going to change and somewhat spoil the scale of the facade facing the street that will be one of the main facades. you might want to put a window within that higher gable, or maybe not. But I think particularly at the point when it comes to signage, Scheme 1, as it is now on the left, really limits the size of the sign, which is something we're trying to do, and that helps that happen, because it would never have the sign fill that. It would fit within it. It wouldn't fill it and look as if it's overwhelming it. But I hope the decision eventually is for a much simpler materials thing than brick or stone added. It breaks it up at an odd point. And it's not traditional to do that. It's more of like tacky 1970.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the detail that you've added in the fenestration, the roof lines. The randomness of the roof line is kind of quirkiness we have on here on Cape Cod. I think you've actually captured it a little bit here. You know, it looks like two buildings put together. If you drive around our town, that's what we have everywhere. You know? I think it's much better. I'm pretty good with it. Paul?
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment. Mr. Caputo, we said previously, we appreciate your efforts to do the site layout, and I think that was well done. And we also appreciate the fact that you allowed you brought your client down here to at least talk to us and gave freedom to Mr. Scott to try to make these changes. I think that was a big step in the right direction. I had one quick question. When you were talking about that circular window, you mentioned it was what did you call it? A signature window. How much of a signature window is that? Because Ms. Kafut said that she didn't like it. I didn't know what you meant by
I
that.
think that's a little architectural word freedom there. It's a window in a gable.
So the final question, where is the sign going? Where are you going to put the sign on
So
this?
right now, we have only a leader that points to this area.
So it's a relatively small sign.
Right.
Or, in this scheme, it would be this area and this area.
Okay. So it's much smaller sign-wise than it was before.
It could be. I mean, I think that's gonna be something that is probably gonna go through a similar process of review, discussion with our tenant.
So I think we're all liking Scheme 1 here, right?
Right.
I got some comments.
Good.
I appreciate what you've done as far as giving us a bunch of options here, and I think you should just go with T111 for your siding and be done with it. But, only kidding. People know what T111 is?
Yeah, I used to.
Yeah, good idea.
It's plywood.
Cheap.
My only issue with this is, it looks like it's a vehicle that has been moving along and come to a sudden stop, and the bottom stopped and the top kept going. I really don't like the way the top half of it overhangs the front there. To me, that just looks awful unbalanced to have all that mass sitting on those columns.
Oh, you mean here?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wraps both sides of the building and creates a covered walkway for people.
Well, you could.
There may be benches there, people waiting for.
Right, you could extend the roof, but the top part, if that was pushed back to the same line as the first floor wall, I think it would be better balanced looking.
So that becomes more of a porch.
Yeah.
But
so just take that top and move it like the other one.
Yeah.
Just move
Right,
this.
You don't like.
It just looks.
This line comes out to here as
Yeah.
opposed to here.
Yeah. It just looks awkward.
that could be an artifact of an elevation that flattens everything out to the same depth, because in reality, that's a gabled roof going away from you. It won't read that way when you're really there.
It would look.
The perspective on
It
it
would be an
different.
intersecting gable.
I know our tenant really likes the corner overhang wrapping Davis and out wrapping around to the Dillingham. I always felt like with this architectural design change, it makes it look like, like Tom indicated, an original structure with an addition. The original structure had a front porch. The gable in this design, this roof line is the overhang for that front porch area. The gable, I think, is back on closer to the, well, I guess it is out over the overhang with this structure here. So
But
it's kind of the look and the feel that
It's
they're
not
going for.
It's not unsupported. I think architecturally, that double column indicates that it's picking up the load, so it doesn't feel like it's unsupported. It's just hanging out there.
So, I'm just saying, that's my comment.
Huge improvement, just huge.
Do we have anyone, thank you very much, we really appreciate it. Anyone from the public who would like to comment on this?
Hi, I'm Jill Neubauer, and an architect in Falmouth. I also appreciate the progress that they've made. They really listened to what you had to say last time, and it's just a huge improvement. I think that Scheme 1 has many things to recommend it over Scheme 3, so I'm agreeing with you in that. The point that Bob just made about it having this look of kind of a longer train with a massing up front, I agree that that this piece right here, overhanging this open porch, and this piece here is the reason why this long piece feels too heavy and too much massing that's reaching towards the street. And I think that the success of their strong overhang around the building is terrific. It's really helping the massing. But that piece right there, that's a big roof. This is a massive roof. I would strongly encourage Scheme 1 over this, because this huge gable with that small signature window is facing Davis Straits. That would not be positive. So I think that this is a very big improvement, but this upper piece would benefit, I think, from just stepping back a little bit and letting the porch be this shed shape that reaches down at a more pedestrian scale. I agree with you that I think the one material of the shakes over two materials here is very positive. I happen to feel that the base is a very helpful element here, and that it's, as a dark element in that elevation, is helping to give this building a base.
Yeah.
And when you look at a lot of successful urban buildings, they have a base and a middle and a top. And what you're always trying to do is get that into balance. So to me, this is potentially positive. If that's all shingles, it may look a little different. It may look a little underdressed at the base, because that building wants to have a base. But in the way that when we're looking for a base and a middle and a top, again, to Bob's point, that top's a little big. I think it would settle in a little more quietly if that was reduced. I would caution against the sentimentality, I'll call it ridiculous sentimentality, of shutters that are not, can't be useful, don't fit with the windows, because where there's success here in scale and texture, and then you throw in a couple of shutters on the side just to sort of say, ooh, let's make it a little more textured and charming. I'm not sure that's helpful. I think the building is working well enough without those shutters. I would caution the 6/6 is adding texture. If they're not true divided light muttons, and you get that sheer glass, and you get the fake muttons inside the glass, and you've got all that historic texture without the reality of the actual shadow, I would say I'm not sure that's helping. Then I would back off a little bit on the muttons. But I think overall that helps the scale, but not if it's fake. You know, having this be the area for the signage is helpful. I think that reduction is great. The point about running this across and breaking that facade down, I think, is very helpful. I think that's it. So I strongly suggest Scheme 1 over Scheme 2. This piece here, if you really start to look at the energy running along here, and then this big, massive gable pushing itself out towards the street, I think would be really unfortunate. But I applaud the client and the architect and the developer for listening to your request. This is a much more respectful, contextual building.
And you stand by, Jill, we have some questions for you.
Sure.
Jill, I wonder, just your taste as an architect. We've heard that, forget the red brick. And I said, I wouldn't mind seeing the stone back there again. If you flipped a coin on both of it, I understand the anchorage.
Yeah.
I agree with that. But if you flipped a coin between brick of whatever color and the gray stone that they have been proposing previously, what would be your choice?
I'm glad you asked, thank you for that. Brick has greater potential to be done well. They can buy a better brick, they can make it a real brick. And there's a lot of nice history of buildings with brick bases. It's hard to do stone well. You have to invest deeply in stone. And it has to be done so well that it doesn't look like a gratuitous, more expensive material thrown at a building to try and make it look substantial. So I would be concerned about most applications of stone are veneers, they're poorly detailed, the mortar's too big, the shape isn't nice, and to do it well is a huge investment. So the red base with the red cedar shingles that will go dark and silver depending upon their exposure could be nice. I think when they spoke of coming back again with the next drawing, I think that will be an important time for you to see that red brick sample and the colors assigned to these materials. The red cedar is a terrific investment that they're making that, and it is much better than a painted material for sustainability. When it mildews, it looks better than when paint mildews. It's just natural. So I think the red cedar is a very nice offering by the client.
Question for Jill?
So they're talking about brick veneer. Is that very thin?
No, it's not that. It would be a real brick. Be a 4-inch brick, typical brick.
So what's the difference? I mean, you have down here brick veneer.
Well, that's what it's called.
Veneer is a wall.
We build a wall behind it, and then the brick is built in front of the wall. So, but it would not be a thin brick. It's not a thin brick.
Then never mind.
Charlotte?
About the brick.
You what?
About the brick. I want you to picture 704 Main Street, a large building, clapboard. I don't know what the material is. What is that? Painted gray something?
I think it may be hardy board.
Whatever it is. But it certainly doesn't have a brick base, and yet it's a large building, and you don't miss it. If you think about most of the colonial buildings around town, or any place that you find them, you don't see a brick foundation. That's not what's there. So as far as what our eyes are used to for a traditional colonial feeling, a Cape Cod feeling, it doesn't involve a brick base or a brick stripe around the bottom. So if we're trying to create some homogeneity to the look of Falmouth, we would not be wrapping the bottom of this building in brick.
One thing that can be a nice, I think that's a nice point. You can take and build that base out a little bit with a water table and then still shingle it, just to get a delineation between the sidewall and a base element that picks up the sill of the windows. And that's a nice way to capture what they're doing here without going to the brick. So that would be an alternative that maybe they could look at, is just a padded out shingle base that just gives a little articulation to it. And that would be a quieter, simpler base piece to that building.
Could we talk with the architect about the muttons? That's an interesting point. What were you picturing using there?
So we would probably use it's a simulated divided light. It's not a true divided light. It'll give the same effect that the architect was speaking of. It'll have an element that's on the outside of the glass.
So the element's on the outside, the inside is a single sheet.
No, the inside also has a muntin as well. And then there's
It just doesn't go all the way through the glass.
Right,
It's adhered to both
Correct.
sides.
That way we can use an insulated piece of glass for the whole
Right.
piece of glass, and then
So it's like a
spacers-
Marvin window or
there's
something like
spacers
that.
are put in between the glass, so it looks as though it goes all the way through, but it
Right.
has an element on each
But they're not the
base of
flat
glass.
snap-ins.
Not
No,
flat.
okay.
Well, I know one of the buildings I've looked at in the past that I've admired is the TD Bank North, that's shingles and brick. It's a pretty good-looking building. It has the mixture of the two, not so much as a solid base, but pieces of it. I think this is a vast improvement.
Yeah, I don't mind the brick.
We're largely in agreement, it seems, on
Yeah, we should let them
scheme one.
design within those ranges. Scheme one is what everyone's saying, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So we've heard great comments and great feedback from the board tonight. I think our next scheduled discussion is 12/12, maybe?
Be there.
Yes.
Yes.
And we will come back with what we will call a conform scheme that we think addresses your most common points made, and with color and some.
I'll bring some materials.
Yeah.
Great.
I'll bring the actual
Well, that would be
brick that
great.
we would like to use,
Great.
Okay.
as well as the shingle.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
just for my guidance board, you're looking to discuss this one more time and then decide it on the 19th.
Yes.
Sure.
So we have a discussion and then a decision.
Mhm.
2 more meetings.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what we
Okay.
expect.
Got it.
Thank you
That's what
very
we
much.
want.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Okay, we have the look at this, the back page of this one doesn't have it.
Yeah.
So I go for it.
Okay, zoning articles.
Okay,
Sorry, I thought there was some splatter on it.
let me read it, or you can read it.
We'll work on that.
So, Brian, some of the pages don't have it on both sides, if you wonder why I'm going back and forth. I've got,
Oh, gee whiz, sorry about
Jim's
that.
losing his hair over it.
so I keep,
Stinger.
he has this one and mine has blank, so I'm just trying to catch up.
Well, we should be on zoning articles for the spring 2018 town meeting.
Yep.
Okay, good. The board may recall last week I handed out 2 articles. First article was accessory apartments in general residence districts. It was essentially apply that bylaw that was passed at the town meeting in April to that general residence district. Around Palmer Avenue is where it's at, and Belvedere Plains. And the board just wanted a week to take it home and digest it and think about it. The second article was the ground-mounted solar array in ag zones. I did reach out to the Board of Appeals, asked them to take a look at that. Are they comfortable, first being the SPGA? And second, are they comfortable with just utilizing the Section 216 criteria? Or did they want more specialized criteria like we have for the accessory apartments or contractor yards? So I guess I would ask the board whether or not you're ready to vote to the warrant the accessory apartment and general residence districts. I'm sort of pushing that a little bit only because we're going to be running up against timeframes. You will always have a hearing. It's just another area that you might find small in town, but there's a lot of potential there for accessory apartments, and that's the thing the board wanted to see happen.
And the general residential are all in village centers primarily.
Primarily. There's some out on T-Ticket Highway near Mr. Alves. But for the most part, it's Belvedere Plains, it's the area around the fire station, it's Palmer Avenue. It's a very small down by Locust Street.
Locust Street.
North Main Street, that area over by the Gulf Station. I think there's some general residence, not a lot of the town. Over by Pinoak Way, I think is general residence. And it's just about there. That's my recommendation.
Okay.
Could I ask a question? Would it be fair to characterize this as sort of falling in with that, the policy dealing with infill, that it's going now toward general residence?
Well, general residence allows 2 and 3 family by right. It's in our centers. Just lost my train of thought. Repeat your question, I'm sorry.
Well, it's upping the density in those areas, so
Yes,
it's, right.
yes, it's already developed. There are very few vacant lots. These are houses that could get converted.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think you could do it today, but this makes it clear and unambiguous.
Okay. Pam?
Any resolution with the Board of Health in terms of the accessory apartments?
That issue is, as far as I know, set aside.
Is what? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure I understand, the Board of Health issue is that dual tank issue?
Dual tank issue is what she's talking about.
Again, that's up to the Board of Health, but my understanding is it's not being imposed. But that's their call.
What happened to the meeting that we were going to have with them?
There was no meeting scheduled with them, as far as I know, Pam. And
We
there's-
provided them with a list of about 25 or 30 places where they didn't require it.
So,
But
well, Mr. Chairman, we can just get back on the discussion of general residence districts. Would the board be amenable to a zoning article to at least introduce it to that district and leave Title V issues with the people who are responsible for it, I think is important.
So, we all in favor of this change of allowing accessory apartments in the general residential district is the question we're here for tonight.
Yes.
So yes, we'd like to see that, Brian.
All we need is a motion.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So we'll vote it, so we'll put it on the warrant, and you'll have a hearing sometime in February, probably. You may want to address other issues at that time.
Okay.
Okay? The other is,
Multifamily, Davis Straits multifamily.
I'm sorry,
No, there's another
the
one.
ag zones. But
Oh,
we'll
the
wait
ag
on-
zone.
Yeah.
We'll wait, I'm sorry, we have to wait on those till we hear back from the Board of Appeals.
Yes.
Okay.
The other one is putting ground-mounted solar arrays in some of the other zones, and we're waiting for comment from ZBA.
Into agricultural.
In agriculture.
Yes, Pat.
Okay. I have something here from December 2014. Model as of right zoning bylaw, allowing use of large-scale ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations. And it was prepared by the Department of Energy Resources, Massachusetts Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. I have no idea how I came across this, but it's huge, and we don't want anything quite that huge, do we?
No.
But do we want to maybe see if we want to poke a few things in?
No.
Okay, just let it be by right in any ag zone.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. That came out of Clean Energy Center and whatnot. It's not,
It's massive.
no.
I didn't propose anything like this, but there were a lot of little clauses in here, and I wondered, do we want to modify? Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
If you do. But
No.
no, I think it's just a simple use change. You'll have a lot of special permit criteria.
So it's a special permit.
It's a special
though, still.
permit, not a by right.
Right, so it's a
I
special.
understand.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I leave it at that.
I was throwing this out because there is this in the state.
Oh,
Okay.
Yes,
Which
yes.
basically means the zoning board of appeals decides whether 240-216 and all its categories, views and vistas, neighborhood character, those are all the protections they
Oh,
have.
part of it, right.
But it's their work, not ours.
And we'll see, we'll hear back from them soon, I hope.
Okay. Now, Davis Straits multifamily zone. Well, I think for me, the biggest thing about if we're talking multifamily is, okay, how many units per acre are we talking about? I think we need to get on the same page there.
Well, if I could, I asked for this to come on the agenda because Pam and I have been sort of deputized to go and think about it, and we have. And we've given you a draft for discussion that brings up all the issues that at some point are going to have to be covered, and there are other issues beyond these, but these are sort of the main ones. And I thought it would be easier for us to move forward if we had just some stuff on paper to react to. And it seemed in looking at the zoning book and listening to Brian, as we should, that we were going to first have to define what a multifamily residence would be. What did we mean by that when we talked about it? And then where are we talking about? But then particularly what purposes are we going to serve? And in this draft that we've brought to you, the definition is pretty standard. If you want to take a look at that, you have a sheet that came in your folder, and it covers It's intended to cover all the different kinds that there might be, rather than to restrict them, so that it could be units within one building or several in one complex, including duplexes, quadruplexes, apartment buildings, townhouses, cluster houses, rental apartments, cooperatives, and condominiums, so that it's not intended to be restrictive, but to be inclusive. And I'm not asking you to agree or disagree, just to think about that, because we'd need this piece in it, and that we're talking right now only about applying this or thinking about it in terms of the reset area. So that we've got it localized, and we have things that we can build on that were suggested to us in the reset area about where the multifamily housing appropriately might go within that area. And then the purpose, rather than making up some words, I thought it might be better to use words that have already been made up and approved by town meeting and come straight from the local comprehensive plan, that we're just trying to carry forward the policies already agreed on by the town. This is what we're up to. It's not a new purpose, it's just carrying that forward. We could go with that or not. And then come to the questions, the question that Jim raises right away, and it will be the thorniest probably, but not only the thorniest, of how many units per acre. I don't know if you want to take these in any kind of order, or you want to comment first on the definition, applicability, and purpose. How would you like to have this discussion work?
Can I ask, some of this verbiage is from the Housing Institute, that I think so. I mean, I recall many of the other communities that were there for those weeks talked about the same type of housing for all.
Oh, absolutely.
Basically.
Many towns discuss it this way.
Right, and it's not just Falmouth, it's every community that's struggling with providing housing with dignity for all, across all ages, all economic strata. And so we're not alone in this. This is really something that I think communities across the Cape are looking at, which I think is important because it doesn't make Falmouth, it makes Falmouth part of the greater community of Cape Cod, which I think, I personally like that concept. Because if we're not all doing something similar, then we're not doing our jobs. Because I think this is what it's all about, and how we go about providing it with the density. You know, I think it's critically important. We're at a juncture right now, I think.
Pat?
Well, I'm going to sort of jump in with a generalized comment on the major provisions, and this is when we had the gathering here, all different kinds of people, from town, from public, and the commission did I would call it like a show and tell. Do you prefer this? Do you prefer that?
Mm-hmm.
And in memory, what occurs to me that was said is, we don't want, okay, right here we want everything right against the sidewalk. What we really were talking about when people were commenting is they wanted varying building heights, they wanted varying setbacks, so it maintained a community character. And so that goes to setbacks, to character, build-to line, heights. So that's a generalized concept that people were expressing here.
Well, in the Davis Strait reset response to that, having gotten that feedback, was to suggest breaking that area up into at least 4 other areas.
Yeah.
And answering those questions for each of the 4, rather than trying to make them all alike.
And the other concept that I wanted to blend in is both a minimum in some areas and a maximum. So I'm envisioning that some areas of these Davis Straits, we want them to have apartments on the 2nd and 3rd floor. Because that would be a minimum units that we would apply. So that if they had a retail store and we had a minimum of, I don't know, in a certain zone, 2 or 3 units per acre. If they had a half-acre building, they'd have to get, 1 or 2 units on the second and third floor, and stores and, service communities on the second, I mean, on the first. That's what, as opposed to just allowing to come in and put a flat roof in the middle of it. I mean, I think what I'm looking for is buildings that have uses on the second and third floor, the second and third floor being a half story. Because I'm still thinking right now, or unless we want to change, we could go to 3 full stories in some areas. But that's something we can discuss too. That might be appropriate on the primary roads, or, you know what I mean, and to be 3 stories, and it might be more appropriate to be 2.5 further in. I don't know, I'm just.
Or, if you're talking about the plaza, you're seeing it from the main road, and we have been talking about, you want to do sort of a courtyard in between parking and everything. So you might want to have the lower profile towards the front, and then where you've got a lot of the businesses already, have the higher profile back there, so that you can you get a layered effect. You already do, because there's a ground rise.
Right. So let's go back to the big one here. What do you think the density the units per acre should be?
Well, the Cape Cod Commission says 12 maximum. That's what they suggested to us in the reset thing. And they repeated it again in the housing assistance seminars that Pam and I have been going to with other people in Falmouth. And yet, said in that same thing, and I really wonder what each one of you, and John, your experience doing these kinds of things, what you think of it. They were saying, well, the only way you're going to get a developer to come in to put in multifamily housing and have it be economical is you have to have a density of 20 to 30 units per acre, or else it just won't pay, and nobody's going to take us up on these other things. We won't have made the incentives for it. And at first I thought, well, that's genuinely horrible. And then was looking with Jim actually at a listing of all the 40B developments in town, and I was really stunned at how many there are. Have you seen that list, all of you? It's an interesting list.
Well, Brian did present it to us at one time.
Okay,
so
you have it.
whether
It's just
we
news to
remembered or
me.
not, we did see it.
Okay, and on it, there's Dillingham Place, which I think is handsome, and is one of the biggest, absolutely. And think how great Atria looks. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And they're both 40Bs, but friendly 40Bs, and they look wonderful. They're not horrible, and clearly they were feasible because there they are. So and I hope it's working out for those developers.
I think what happens when people hear number of units per acre, they think houses here. If you think 12 houses on an acre of land, oh, heaven, the sky's falling. But what's Oddfellows that?
32 units an acre.
Yeah. So,
32? Whoa.
and it's 4 apartments in one building, but the equivalent would be 32 per acre. And that's what people have to wrap their heads around is how do these units look as opposed to that paradigm of looking at a separate house sitting on a piece of dirt.
Right.
And that's the tough thing because people automatically think in terms of houses down here. We don't think like city folk think about houses and apartments and dwellings.
Right. If, maybe recall, I know this has been a while, so we did talk about floor area ratios instead of number of units. So if I had a 40,000 square foot lot, I can have 40,000 square feet. You know, that's a floor area ratio of 1. That's what we're sort of getting at. And the model building was over on Worcester Court, where that building I showed you, that first aerial. That was a floor area ratio of 1. I think it was 0.9 or something like that. So start thinking in those terms, like
So instead of units per acre, we should be thinking, so if it's on an acre lot, they got 40,000 square feet.
You can have 10 4,000 square foot units, or you could have 20 2,000 square foot units.
Right.
We don't care. We just want to know how much square footage you have.
But taking Bob's point, I think, and yours together, floor area square ratio is so hard to conceptualize. You don't get from here to there with a quick, oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Right.
If we say that and illustrate it each time. then we might get somewhere, because this is going to be hard to explain to people.
I know, but I think in order to do it, when we decide what we want, we could either go to the Cape Cod Commission or somebody and say, okay, put this on paper and see what it looks like.
Well,
good point.
let me advance that a little bit,
Okay.
because I have called the commission. I think maybe the time has come, and I'm going to put that out there, that maybe we advance the reset study.
Frank, could you talk up just a little bit?
Sure, make it.
Yeah, Raymond?
Maybe, yes, I'm sorry. Maybe we should now start thinking about advancing the reset study to an implementations phase. We can't do it here on our own. You just saw the last 4 weeks was piled high with plan reviews. And then the board gets the last, 15, 20 minutes of a long night to talk about your planning efforts. So I think it's time for me to reach out, and I've already done that, to sort of bring the commission, Cape Cod Commission back in and actually have them do an implementation plan. I think it'd be good for them, too.
Yeah.
Bring it, help you get to town meeting. They also have some of the visualization tools that we don't have here, and the manpower we don't have here. So I'm going to reach out to them, and I've already left a message for Sharon Rooney. I think that's probably the way to go. I want the board to think about that a little bit. Have them turn some more wrenches for you. Because, you're going to be seeing more decisions on the 12th and whatnot, so might be a good thing to do it that way. And then think about it in terms of non-traditional zoning. Put zoning aside for a minute. That's sort of in-the-box stuff. We've talked about allowing this as more of a DCPC, because you want to do form-based code. It might be that after we're done with this project we just saw tonight, you may want to think about bringing the commission in, doing a DCPC. We can talk about that a little bit more on the 19th of December. And essentially nominate that area as an economic. There are various DCPCs you can have. Don't think of it like the one we have out in Black Beach. You can have, economic development type DCPCs or whatever it might be. It's a district of critical planning concern.
Oh.
They have them on Martha's Vineyard as part of the Martha's Vineyard Commission Act, and they have them here on Cape Cod as part of the Cape Cod Commission Act. There's about a dozen on Cape Cod. We were the first back in 1995.
What are they called?
A district of critical planning concern. And you can start thinking about other things outside the box, other than just your regular zoning stuff. But to get there, you need the manpower, you need the tools, and I think it's time to rally up the commission staff here.
Can we do that in 2 phases? Can we once have a discussion with them about the things we'd like to see and then have them
Oh, yes.
bring it back?
Yeah, they would insist. That's what's
Yeah.
going on. Come in and say, what do you want, right? Right.
Well,
So I think it might be good to initiate that for some time. Initiate that now and probably pick up the ball in January.
Let me ask a
Hold on. Charlotte?
Maybe we need to do that in order to get on their calendar, which is good to do to, get some oomph going. But
Yeah,
I would love an opportunity to know what we think before, and give them some of our thoughts rather than
Sure.
waiting to be spoon-fed entirely.
Well, see, my process was to at least have them come in and listen to your discussions. All right. Come January, as you know, there'll be a sort of a reduction in hours here. So it might be good to have them on board as you advance these discussions. Sitting right here and listening, taking it all in, to work with them to actually implement some of the things you want to do.
Pam?
So my question, because I don't know this, does the Cape Cod Commission, are they similar to like MAPC in the Boston metro area where they do,
Right.
when they do these studies, they do the traffic studies?
Right.
And okay, so
They're a regional planning agency, just like MAPC.
Okay, so,
right.
I mean, I think that's really helpful, even as I think about the whole Davis Straits area and the town center, and bringing, more traffic through. I think we're gonna need a really in-depth traffic study.
Well, remember, we have the McMahon study
There is one.
that we did a couple of years ago now. So we have an actual traffic study that dovetails with everything, with the reset study. It was ongoing at the same time as the reset study. If you don't have a copy, I'll make sure you have it. Did all of Route 28, Jones Road. We have the concept plans. We're advancing the concepts that the McMahon study has down by Friendly's for that. So we have land use and transportation go hand in hand. It's always chicken and egg. One drives the other. Yes, no, maybe. Well, yes, but we have both. We have both. Right.
Paul?
I'd just like to make a comment. The applicability is within this Davis Strait area, but maybe we should indicate why it's in that area at this time. You know, transportation, access to sewers and whatnot. That's.
It fits the local comprehensive plan.
But that's the reason that's defined in that limited area.
Right.
And it may be applicable in other areas if similar conditions exist.
Good point.
Right. The sewer is really what makes, and public transportation, the sewer, I mean, that's where you need it.
And the prior planning effort that's gone into it builds
Yeah.
on all of that.
And the mixed use, I mean, it fits into smart growth.
Right.
This
Yes.
is, all fits in very
And I
nicely
actually hope
to
that when they
smart
study
growth.
this,
I am going to add it up.
that the traffic, by having housing in the downtown with public transportation, can actually cut down on traffic instead of increase it. One of the things I've talked with people said, why don't you build this housing way out in Hatchville or someplace that said, because then they'll all have to get in their cars and drive all the drive down here, we'll still have the same problem. Why don't we fix both problems at one time, is the idea.
We need a shuttle too.
Well, Jim, do you want to describe why it is you're so concerned about a minimum density?
I think it changes the look of the building. I think if you have a minimum density and they're forced to put a second story with apartments on it, it'll change the look.
Well, it's also true that if we just do it as an overlay over the B2 zone that's already there, we get stuck with what it says there unless we specifically exclude 1- and 2-family houses, because it will fill up with the tinier things as other places have.
Right.
And we don't want that to happen.
Exactly.
We want
Right.
this to be different.
Right.
Well, I think the mixed use is a component that we're all talking about for this. Everything that I remember, there was a couple signature type buildings, but everything I remember was mixed use everywhere, you know. Retail of some kind, office and apartments, all in the same building. So people could actually live and work in the same neighborhood and not even need a car. Because they could walk to the store. They could walk to the beach. I mean, and that's what I think that this Davis Straits area has the ability to provide our town.
But we ought to be looking at it as the 4 separate units that were suggested in the plan, rather than a single thing, to be sure we get things with the variety. Right. So what strikes you as the top density that works? If it's going to be minimum 3, the top would be like where? In the most dense of the 4 zones, what would you allow? What would you go for?
The 2 that were cited, that are the high density, they were set back with a lot of green in front of them. And so you don't mind the high density. You don't even think about that because you have visual space there too. So you can get away with a lot higher density in those places.
But I think Brian might be onto something. Instead of talking units per acre, that we just talk about the square footage of the building, the FAR, the use before, or
We might have to
form zoning.
translate that into this, but in the meantime, before we really understand what that is, just as a way for us to picture what we understand among ourselves.
Well, let's throw 12 out there for discussion right now. You want to throw a higher number for discussion?
Oh, I would like to, John, I would love to see a higher number as one of the possibilities, sure.
I prefer that we take the area that we're talking about, say from where Friendly's is to where Stop and Shop is, Worcester Court, Davis Straits, and look at it and say, maybe we'd like to create 500 residential units there, or 300 residential units.
And then see how it fits.
And see how it fits, and along with that, how much commercial space are we trying to get there? And then also had the green space, and what does it say in this statement? We want the developers to create this space.
Yeah,
And we want to give them the opportunity to create the space. We're not going to create the space. We're going to create the opportunity for the
Right.
space.
So you're saying not lot by lot, but by the whole area?
I think that would be a good starting point. And,
You have that
and I
ready.
don't know what the number is, but to look at it and,
Well, we could
That's
actually
an
get some
interesting
feedback from the
approach.
commission of what do they think would be a significant impact to solve some of our,
Sure, but I think the broad parameters you should be doing,
okay,
just like you tell me, you tell them.
okay.
I'm the professional planner,
Okay.
I know best. No, you know best, you guys know best. So I
Paul,
think
Paul,
that's a good
Then
idea
Pat.
that John came up with. I think we already have the ingredients there, and one of the ingredients is, well, how many are there today?
Right.
You'd probably be amazed. So I'll work on that a little bit for you.
Interesting.
I think it might be helpful.
that's where we want the density is.
Right.
I mean, that's what we've talked about.
Yes.
so.
It's possible that the people or corporations or whatever already owns those vast parking lots in front of Staples up to Cappy's. They might see this as a terrific opportunity themselves without changing ownership.
Well, that's what we hope.
Sure.
Paul?
I was going to suggest maybe we should talk to a developer and find out what's economically feasible for them in terms of units per acre, and see what they would do, because unless they're willing to build it, it doesn't matter what we say. If we say it's too low, they're not going to come. But if we talk to a few people and say, you know, what would be a viable number of units per acre on a development of such and such size, we might get more realistic feedback than just pulling a number out of the air.
Pat?
You remember the blank map
I do.
exercise? That's exactly what we're talking about here. We've got the reset area.
Yeah.
And we can just take that sort of a blank and say, okay, Falmouth Plaza, front part of it, what do we want to see? And just kind of sketch in blocks on that. Proposed density, just, you know, draw it out of the ether, in a way.
I think I'd like to hear what we actually have in there first. That's a really
Yeah,
good, before I start throwing out opinions, I would like to know what's there, and then we could add it to our discussion.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
I think I have it somewhere.
It's kind of interesting. After our last discussion, I drove in that area that comes off the Davis Straits, where you go into the area and you come up with affordable housing is right downtown. You know that area near Cappy's?
Yeah?
I drove through there, and that's a big open area I never realized was there, but we
That's
talked a
called
little
Rose
bit about-
Street.
What's it
That
called?
funny little dirt road
Yeah.
going through Rose Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Right.
talked about that, but I drove there the other day, and I didn't realize that open area was there.
Yeah.
It's all Seward?
Yeah.
Yep. And there's an open corner when you go up Dillingham Place as it crosses Davis Strait. I think it changes its name to go past Cappy's, and it
Yeah.
comes to Worcester Court and changes its name again to Spring Bars. On that corner, on the right-hand corner across the street, all that is a paved asphalt lot. That's just begging to be turned into something. And that would be part of this area.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll get the commission in
Ryan,
here and I'll get you
just
some.
One
info.
more thing, go ahead.
Just one other, just a question. The last thing thrown in down here is character, and I don't see character anywhere else in our zoning book, and yet we could do that.
That's why I'm saying think outside zoning, form-based, you know,
Well, but form is all about mass and character.
Right.
which you don't really see in zoning bylaws.
No, you don't, so I'm wondering, can't you?
No.
Because,
Section, the state statute says you can't regulate those methods and materials regulated by the state building code. So there's this debate out there that's been simmering for 40 years, whether, you know, well, we can use aesthetics, we can do this, we can do that, but technically, zoning bylaws cannot regulate methods and materials of construction regulated by the state law, by the state code.
It's kind of interesting. We had a lot of discussion about character earlier
yeah, we did.
We did.
with the Caputo presentation.
That's under
And you can
design.
discuss those things, and you're discussing them in broad, general terms, but you really can't get into, and you can, it's section 3, chapter 48, it's right there. think it's the first paragraph. You really can't get into the weeds. And there are some towns, like Brewster has some bylaws that got into it, but you can't have metal buildings. AG threw it out. Okay? Can't regulate methods and materials of construction.
But character, for instance, to say traditional Cape character isn't either a method or a material.
But what is it? Your opinion might be different. You have to have specific standards. But you don't see them in zoning bylaws, which is why I'm saying, think outside the box.
Pam has a question?
Well, what we do have is, we do talk about in the LCP, we talk about village character. And, you know, within Falmouth, there are all the different villages that, to me, being relatively new here, definitely has a different character. You know, North Falmouth, West Falmouth seems much more country than other parts of Falmouth, or way out by Wacoit has a whole different feel, a whole different character to it. So I do think that as we look, I mean, I agree, and I think character can take on various shapes, and it's going to be how we define it, but certainly in the LCP, that was a big part of what is the character of certain areas. And so Davis Straits is a much more densely mixed, much more of a urban feel to it than Wacoit or North Falmouth or West Falmouth. So, I mean, I think opportunities to really play with this and make it Falmouth's, make it its own.
That's good.
Okay.
I think we've had a good discussion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there anything?
Well, we usually talk a little bit about the next meeting and future agenda items.
Motions to adjourn are not debatable.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
See you on the 19th.
12th.
12th, jeez, oh my God.
Is it the 12th and the 19th?
We got a full agenda.
Right, 12th and the 19th, and that'll be it for the year.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
I third the motion.
And the site visit.
Here's all the 40 days.